I'd rather not answer that. How's that?
Aggravation. Watch David Pakman Show. See your political knowledge grow. Sign up for membership now for the bonus show.
I've been growing this one huge pepper.
This is me in my aviary a couple years ago.
They're all summer. It's time to pluck it.
Sign up for membership now for the bonus show. That's best in time.
It's a pirate's life, my lad.
All right. So there it is. That's David Pakman Sea Shanty music video version, which I think is really, really good. I like that very, very much. Folks, people are pouring in here, and I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Thanks, Tina, for the $20 super chat. Kratos says, your thoughts on the Court of Appeals striking down Trump at every turn in regards to the classified documents now granting the DOJ expedited appeal. Have not reviewed the expedited appeal ruling yet. We'll look at it in time for tomorrow's podcast. By the way, I almost never mention this. We have an audio podcast, and I would love it if you signed up, just subscribe to it. It's free. Honestly, I don't care if you prefer to watch on YouTube. Just having people subscribe to the audio podcast on whatever platform you use, whether it's, iTunes Music or Stitcher, whatever. It's really, really a great thing. We have that daily audio podcast, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. In 15 seconds, can you ask me a question? Sure, Andrew. What's your take on ravioli? For or against? James says, sir, I'm coming to you with tears in my eyes, asking you to play random clips of Trump flubbing his speech despite his very powerful brain. Yeah, I have a couple new Trump elements here.
Further scream that his days are numbered. This is a gross prosecutorial misconduct.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm coming.
I've got that one. What else do I have here from Trump?
People were starting to come, and he's going to represent you long and hard.
Yeah, so those are my newest Trump elements. Oh my goodness, I am missing so much. I want to say thank you to Davis Schultz for signing up at joinpacman.com and becoming new member number 1 this evening. Also, a big thank you to Jason Sickmeyer for gifting a subscription at joinpacman.com. And over on Twitch, the situation is extraordinarily explosive. I want to say thank you to Manger Poutine, Breezy, Nug Wrangler gifted 5, putting us at 7. Gordon Z. Hall is 8. Esprez gifted 20, which is 28. Our friend Lars Barenroth re-upping for month 29. That's 29 total. And then Tiger Girl makes it 30. 30 plus 2. 0 plus 2 is 2. Nothing to carry. And then you've got your 3. So that puts us at 32 out of 100. And that's like roughly a third. I can eyeball it by looking at that. 32 out of 100 is roughly a third. All right, let's keep going because I have so many other important things. The Pakman Finance YouTube channel is blowing up. If you were hoping to be one of the first 10,000, I offered you to be one of the first 1,000, and many of you missed it. And then I offered you to be one of the first 5,000 to subscribe to Pakman Finance, and many of you missed it. And then I said, guys, 10,000 is coming quick. This is the fastest growing YouTube channel we've ever had. And then that milestone has now been missed. So there is really good stuff on the finance channel. It's not political. It's all buttoned up personal finance stuff. So take this opportunity. Get in on the ground floor. Get in on the ground floor is what I would say. One other thing I wanted to mention, I have been thinking that as a goof, it would be really interesting to get like a huge billboard promoting the show. I know that there are some people like Tim Pool et al. Who have done that. And it's like, it's almost as more interesting for the reactions and as a goof than for the publicity. Because quite frankly, like I was looking up in the New York area, what can we do? Staten Island would be funny because Staten Island's the most right wing of the various boroughs. But you look at these, it's like, it's really not for the publicity because look, the daily circulation, it's 77,000. Like for a show like ours, 77,000 anything isn't going to move the needle unless it's 77,000 paid subscribers. But what I mean is from the standpoint of impressions, 77,000 is not that much. But if anybody in the audience knows about buying billboards, has a connection, can get us pricing, like this, for example, you can get a mobile billboard in New Rochelle for $3,000. That seems like a terrible deal. I don't know that New Rochelle is the place to be for us. But in any case, I think this would be super interesting, and it might turn into a thing where people will go and photograph themselves with a billboard, and maybe we'll get trolling. Maybe we could, fundraise around it or something like that. So the point here is calling all billboard experts. I would love for you to get in touch if you can facilitate or something like that. And also, I would go with a conservative area. Like, the idea of New York City is interesting because it's New York City, but I would do like a conservative area. They're probably way cheaper. And the lulls value is probably similar. So so we'll look into that very strongly. Australian to US dollar exchange rate is negative, so you were giving me money. Yeah, that's true. If you super chat from Australia, you actually earn money. It's really crazy. And thanks to Marcus Bustos for signing up at joinpacman.com. Your new member number 33. All right, I have so many other things to get to that I don't want to continue wasting time. Here's something absolutely hilarious. I'm going to cover this on the podcast tomorrow. As many of you no doubt know, right now, Herschel Walker is in the middle of an abortion scandal. Now, why is it a scandal? Well, it's a scandal because he's an incredible hypocrite. And he says, oh, abortion's murder, never, no exceptions for anything. I guess the exception is if he accidentally gets a woman pregnant and it would be inconvenient to have a baby. Then all of a sudden he's for it. He's accused of having paid for an abortion after urging an ex-girlfriend to get one. So this is the best. Somehow, he does a press conference. Herschel Walker can barely speak. So who allowed him to do this to the extent that his advisors can actually influence him? This went so poorly that I just can't even believe it. Take a look at this.
Any of the mothers of your children?
No.
To ask why? Why not?
Why'd I need to?
Well, because according to the article, the woman who says that you paid for her to have an abortion.
The question is, have you called any of the mothers of your children?
Is also the mother of one of your children. It seems like that's an easy way to.
Because of the article, I had more kids.
Because of the article, I had more kids. What does that mean? That'd be like if I were to say, because of a basketball card, I had more kids. Like, what does that mean? I don't even understand what that means. Because of the article, I had more kids.
That's why I didn't reach out to anyone, because I said no, and that's what I mean. When I said no, I said it's not correct, that's a lie. And that's what I mean, that's a lie.
But if the woman said that
yes, let me go to her.
Thank you. You said that if this did happen, there's nothing to be ashamed of. How do you
Wait, I
figure
never
that?
said, I
You
never
said that
said
this morning on,
He did say that. He said it in the morning, yeah.
on you.
No, what I said, I was talking about something totally different.
Yeah. He was literally asked, let's go to that clip. Here he is. This was this
Forgiven.
morning. He did indeed say, if he did it, there's nothing to be ashamed of.
I'm saying I've been forgiven because of all the things I did when I went to the thing with my ex-wife and all that, and things I did. I don't know how many years ago that I wrote in my book. I said, guys, I wasn't perfect. I had my problem with mental health, and I've been born again, but I have a new life. And I've been moving forward, and if that had happened, I would have said it because there's nothing to be ashamed of there.
If that had happened, I would have said it because there's nothing to be ashamed of. He did say it. He did say it. It's all completely and totally bonkers. Here's another funny moment where I won't even explain it. Let's just listen.
Herschel, the Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan went on TV, I think last night, and had some very critical words of you, saying that the Republican Party was in disarray.
Yes.
I think his direct quote, paraphrasing it, was the only reason he's the Republican nominee is because he scored a lot of touchdowns for the University of Georgia.
Now, who was it you said did that?
Jeff Duncan.
Oh, what is he doing now?
Lieutenant Governor.
Oh, God. Wait, the Lieutenant Governor said the following. Who said that? Oh, Lieutenant Governor Duncan. What is he doing now? He's the lieutenant governor, like we've mentioned multiple times now.
Yeah, but I don't know, what is he doing now? He does work for who? Don't he go on some TV show all the time? No. Don't he go on the TV and talk a lot?
He's still the
No, don't he go on TV and talk a lot? Right now, people like that, do I listen to? People told me I couldn't play football. So do you want me to listen to someone like that? I'm here to win the seat for the Georgia people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about Jeff Duncan, but I guess it's probably true that Jeff Duncan does not play football. That's probably true.
What's your reaction to people so close to you? Your son, a mother of your someone who says that she's the mother of your kids, saying that you're lying. What's your reaction to people so close to you saying don't trust you?
Well, just like what I just said, the Democrat is desperate for this seat. This seat is important.
His son, Christian Walker, is a right-wing MAGA influencer. Like, yeah, Democrats really have it out for me. Right, but your son loves Trump. What are you even talking about?
They're very desperate for this seat. I love my family. I always love my family.
All right. So this was a really, really, really bad idea. Okay, here's the ashamed about thing. All right, so we're going to move on to the Kanye interview in a moment. But how wacky is that? I mean, I don't know, how much he talked to the advisors before making the decision to do that. But that was a really, really, really bad press conference. And on tomorrow's podcast, I'll have a more in-depth breakdown. A few other super chats coming in. Paco says, love your streams. You got me into keeping a closer eye on politics. And we'll always appreciate you for it. Stay safe. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Bronx says, the Jesus reverse Uno, but I'm Christian nonsense. Right. Absolutely. Thanks to Pinky Gradwoman, Slingblade, and Snordsy for the Twitch Prime subscriptions. I've got one other new song to play for you. This is from, I believe the correct pronunciation is Kishore. This is a new song I received. Check this out.
Go ahead, David. Keep drinking your soy and getting your poison shots and believing everything the media tells you. Whatever you do, definitely don't question anything. Ever. But if you do see this video...
In all seriousness, this may be the highest quality song we've ever had, and we've had a lot of high-quality songs.
I'd like to make a couple of very small requests. One, please stop uploading my content so we can monetize it.
This is these are clips from when OAN anchor Allison Steinberg came after me.
I believe you owe me some cash now, along with your apology. And two, for the love of God, stop playing your pre-recorded sound bites impersonating Alex Jones, because quite frankly, they suck, and you sound nothing like him. If you're gonna make fun of someone, at least do a decent job. Oh, and last thing, your button-up sweater vest has got to go. You're already affiliated with the party who's in support of Max. So I would hate for people to think that you're one of them. Just say.
Obama.
Guys, there is no video. People are like, I can't see the video. There is no video. This is just a song. It's audio. All right, then it goes on. Okay, so you get it. Anyway, so that's another possibility. Folks could, if you want to make a video out of it, just email info@davidpakman.com. Ask for the audio file. Wesley with a $50 super chat says, been watching for years. Glad I can finally help out. Slava Ukraini. Absolutely. All right, should we look at the Kanye interview? It's pretty despicable. Kanye West, now apparently an All Lives Matter advocate, appeared with, and a White Lives Matter advocate, appeared with Tucker Carlson. Just the perfect combination.
For the people, even if you don't believe in God, God believes in you.
Right. So did you guys know that? That's pretty deep. That's pretty deep.
You made reference to the White Lives Matter T-shirt which you brought out at Paris Fashion Week.
Yeah.
Why did you do that, and what did it mean?
You know, I do certain things from a feeling. I just channel the energy. It just feels right. It's using a gut instinct, a connection with God, and
God told him to wear a White Lives Matter shirt in Paris. That's interesting. God's got quite a sense of humor, huh?
just brilliance. You know, like as if you asked like Tanya Harding how she did the triple flip or the triple spin.
What about you ask Tanya Harding how she came up with having Nancy Kerrigan's leg broken or whatever it was? That's a better question.
She was in so much practice that when it was time for her
Tanya
to
Harding.
skate in a competitive format, it just happened. Like it happened outside of practice. It happened in the real format.
Imagine thinking this makes sense, and imagine being Tucker Carlson and just like nodding along to this. It's clearly someone who has very limited connection to reality.
And that's what's happening. Is God is like preparing us for the real battles. And we are in a battle with the media. Like the majority of the media has a godless agenda, and
this guy is completely out of it. I mean, this probably is better for a psychiatric situation, but he's hitting a lot of points that are super useful politically for Tucker. Tucker's almost like taking advantage of him in a way.
Jokes in that work and this whole like, oh yeah, he's crazy and all these things, they don't work because the media has, you know, they've also watched travesties happen, just even specifically to me, and just watch it and act like it wasn't happening.
This might be too much even for Tucker.
And they stay quiet about it.
What have they?
I want to answer the white.
Yeah.
I feel like someone caught what I was saying, the comparison to Tanya Harding about the White Lives Matter. You know, my dad is an educated ex-Black Panther,
We're not strangers
and
anymore.
he put a text to me that said White Lives Matter, ha 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 ha. And I said, I thought the shirt was
Elizabeth,
a funny shirt. I thought the idea of me wearing it was funny. And
super
I
fun.
said, Dad, what do you think it was funny? He said, just a black man stating the obvious.
Wow, that's deep. This is Tucker's. Wow, that's deep. Isn't that great, guys? Tucker thinks it's very, very, very deep.
Understood.
Let's look at let's look at another clip here.
When did you start to feel this way? When did you start to realize this?
I really felt like, I think I started to really feel this need to express myself on another level when Trump was running for office and I liked him. And every single person in Hollywood, from my ex-wife to my mother-in-law to my manager at that time to, you know, my so-called friends / handlers around me told me, like, if I said that I like Trump, that my career would be over, that my life would be over. They said stuff like people get killed for wearing a hat like that. They threatened my life. They put my life. They basically said that I would be killed for wearing the hat. I had someone call me last night and said anybody wearing a White Lives Matter shirt is going to be greenlit, and that means that they're going to beat them up if they wear it. And I'm like, you know, okay, green light me then.
Right. Wow. Pretty powerful declaration.
So the answer to why I wrote White Lives Matter on a shirt is because they do. It's the obvious thing.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah. Yeah. They do. Yeah. They do. I think I have like one more. No, this is something else. So that's pretty weaponized stuff. That's pretty weaponized stuff. Jeez. Man, I don't even really know what to say. It's all bonkers. It's all bonkers. Anybody have any opinion on that? I mean, I don't even really know what to say. It's all sad. It's just like a mixture of confusion and mental illness and opportunism and reactionary thinking. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. I miss the old Kanye. Yeah, there you go. That's fair. Chitty says, sir, I had KBBQ, I guess I mean Korean barbecue in Helsinki yesterday. I heard some Finns regurgitating the same transphobic talking points touted by the American right. That's sad. That's very sad. Folks, we are 2 minutes away from the debate in the U.S. Senate race between incumbent Democrat Mark Kelly, MAGA-endorsed Republican candidate Blake Masters, and an independent candidate named Mark Victor, who, to be totally frank, I have never heard of. I think that this is going to be an interesting debate because Masters is completely out of his mind, and Mark Kelly is like so normal and buttoned up. So I'm so glad that you're joining me. I would love for you to show your support of our ongoing 2022 debate coverage. We have more than a dozen other debates scheduled for the remainder of the election season to cover live, including some nights with multiple debates back to back, which I might do, or I might not. I would love for you to show your support for that and for my glasses by signing up at joinpassion.com. We have a humiliatingly modest goal of 100 subscribers today. We're already at 36, which is 36% of the way there according to my TI-83 calculator. And you can use the coupon code INDICT to save a humiliating amount off of the membership. I don't even want to tell you what the discount is because it's too embarrassing to say out loud. Needless to say, I will do my best to thank every single person who grabs one of those memberships before or after the debate, which is scheduled to start any moment. I also want to say thank you to Pow Owl, High Gull, Mrs. Coin, and JP the Beast for Twitch Prime subscriptions, and S-Prez just gifted 6 of them, which puts us at 46. We are, I believe, on track to get to a fantastic number. Let's see if I can squeeze in one more clip here before the debate starts.
It's a steady onslaught.
An onslaught? Oh my God. What is he talking about?
It's a steady onslaught.
Oh God. Rand Paul jumping the shark.
Propaganda, just keep getting vaccinated so people don't believe them anymore. Because according to Dr. Fauci, you might need 10 vaccines, 100 vaccines. There's no limit to these people because they're not willing to look at the science.
All right, an onslaught. Jeez. Edgy material from Rand Paul. I'm sort of shocked to hear that that's the direction he's going with his rhetoric. Masters, if I win, it's legit. If Kelly wins, it's fraud. Yeah. I almost do think I should have some backup stream just in case this thing doesn't go live. Mark Kelly. Oh!
It will help determine which party will control. There it is. Our debate rules tonight are that each candidate will get 90 seconds to answer a question with 45-second rebuttal periods. Okay. Each candidate also gets a 1-minute opening and closing statement, with closing statements going in reverse order of the opening remarks.
Here we go.
Now for tonight's debate in alphabetical order, we welcome Democratic incumbent Senator Mark Kelly, retired astronaut with NASA. He also served in the U.S. Navy. Republican Blake Masters, an attorney, businessman, and author, and a member of the Trump 2016 transition team. And Libertarian Mark Victor, an attorney who served in the U.S. Marine Corps.
There he is.
Let's get things started with opening statements, and we begin with Blake Masters.
Hi, I'm Blake Masters. I'm running to be your next senator because our current senator, Mark Kelly, has messed everything up. Our border is in chaos. We've got drugs and illegal aliens just pouring in.
Oof.
Crime is up. The cost of groceries, actually the cost of everything you need to live, keeps going up.
That's Kelly's
and
fault,
up.
by the way.
Wasn't like this 2 years ago. What changed? Well, Joe Biden took over. And in Washington, Mark Kelly backs Joe Biden every single time. Without thinking twice. Without thinking of Arizona. And you know, it's not what he said he'd do. 2 years ago, Mark Kelly stood right there, and he promised to be independent.
Any amount is enough.
But he broke that promise. My wife, Catherine, and I grew up right here in Arizona. We're raising our 3 little boys here now. And we're sick of seeing Arizona families suffer just because Mark Kelly wants to fit in D.C. Send me to the U.S. Senate, and I will put Arizona families first. Thank you.
Super
Thank you very much. And now we turn to Mark Victor.
Super creepy.
Live and let live. That's my position on every issue. Live your life however you choose. Just let other people do the same thing. My name is Mark J. Victor, and if you're tired of the same old politics, I'm your guy. I'm a proud Marine Corps combat veteran. And for the last 28 years, I've been thinking outside the box as a criminal defense attorney. But the most important thing I've done was found the Live and Let Live global peace movement. We got 2 rules. Don't infringe on anybody's freedoms. And let's just inspire people to be good humans. The Republicans and the Democrats together both are responsible for $31 trillion in debt and the highest inflation we've seen in 40 years. Unnecessary wars, a mismanaged pandemic, and a tribalism that is tearing us apart. One of them kisses Biden's ring, the other kisses Trump's ring. I don't kiss anybody's ring. Unlike my opponents, I am not here to impose my personal views on anyone. I'd be honored to tell you about my plan to achieve freedom and peace for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for our last opening statement, we hear from Mark Kelly.
Big energy.
Ted, thank you. Blake and Mark, good to meet you both. You know, growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. My parents were both cops, and they taught me about public service. I spent 10 years in the I spent 25 years in the United States Navy as a combat pilot and as an astronaut. 2 years ago, you sent me to the United States Senate to cut through the red tape and get things done for Arizona. Now, we have more work to do. Families are struggling and often can't afford gas or prescription medication. So I work with Republicans to bring manufacturing back to America to cut costs. And when Democrats are wrong, like on the border, I call them out on it because I'm always going to stick up for Arizona. Blake Masters, my opponent, on the other hand, has some beliefs that are just dangerous for Arizonans. He celebrated when Arizona enacted an abortion ban. And he wants to privatize your Social Security, sending your savings to Wall Street. So, Ted, this is an important conversation.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's get things started. Senator, we'll start with you. Inflation is at generational highs. Could be going even higher considering OPEC's actions here this week regarding the crude
7 feet
production. Why are consumer prices so high? What have you done to address this issue?
Yeah, first of all, Ted, let me start by saying, as a kid, you know, I remember my mom sitting at the kitchen table, you know, with all the bills spread out with one of those giant calculators, trying to figure out what bill is she going to pay. And it was really challenging. In that period of time, you know, she could only put about $2 of gas in the car, you know, at the time. So I know what people are going through, and I know it's hard. That's why I've worked to cut costs. Hey, when the Biden administration refused to increase oil and gas production, I told him he was wrong. And when prescription drugs are just skyrocketed and seniors can't afford it.
Guys, I like Kelly. He's not seeming ready. This is very shaky.
Blake Masters. I mean, the issue we have here is that this issue affects seniors more than anybody else. Seniors that are on a fixed income. And my opponent, you know, he wants to privatize Social Security. He said private.
Remember, the question was, why are prices so high?
Yeah. Your earnings to Wall Street. I met this older gentleman in Parker not too long ago, and he came up to me and he said, hey, please do not take away my Social Security. I don't know what I will do. For however long I'm in the United States Senate, I'm going to protect your Social Security and Medicare.
Guys, the question was inflation.
To cut the knot and privatize your Social Security, sending your hard-earned dollars to Wall Street.
Blake Masters, 90 seconds. We're talking inflation here. Why is inflation? Why are consumer prices so high, and what would you do about it?
Let's be clear, the greatest threat to seniors' retirement today is the massive, crushing inflation that Joe Biden and Mark Kelly caused. And it's their fault. They caused it. 2 years ago, inflation was 1.5%. Now, in the greater Phoenix metro area, we are suffering from literally the worst inflation in the nation at 13%. Joe Biden's policies caused this, and those are policies that Mark Kelly in Washington has supported every single.
That's also completely untrue.
First, they declared war on oil and gas. Well, what did they think was going to happen? When you declare war on oil and gas in a country that is still mostly powered by oil and gas, you think that's going to send the price of energy to the moon? Well, yeah, it did. They took gas from $2 to $6. Now they want a prize because it's back in the $5.
Oh, God.
No, when you make energy too expensive, well, everything
Isn't
you need
gas like $3.50 right now?
to move, you make energy expensive, you get some inflation. That was the left hook. Well, the Democrats weren't done. Then they decided to print $6 trillion. They print and spent $6 trillion too quickly. The normal person understands. PhD economists don't, apparently. Senators don't. But when you print $1 trillion, that makes every dollar in your wallet worth less and less. It sends prices at the supermarket skyrocketing. You know, they caused this crushing inflation, and it is ruining people's lives. I had parents come up to me 2 weeks ago at a campaign event. They said, we don't eat breakfast anymore. We drink coffee. We drink coffee so that we can afford to feed our kids breakfast. And that's on you, sir. This is the Joe Biden, Mark Kelly economy. I will put a stop to Joe Biden's crazy spending.
He'll end it right
Mark
away.
Victor, 90 seconds. Inflation, what's going on?
Look, people are hurting right now. Inflation hurts the poor the worst. It's a tax on everything. Why is this happening? It's happening because of both the Republicans and the Democrats. It's their foolish economic policies. Look, don't confuse money with wealth. They're not the same thing. Wealth, that's what's produced and what's consumed. Printing and distributing money doesn't make us richer. Doubling the money supply doesn't make us twice as rich. Printing money results in more dollars to buy the same amount of goods, and that's what raises prices. Both the Republicans and the Democrats, both of them, have been recklessly printing money. It's not just this administration. It's Bush, it's Obama, it's Trump, it's Biden. They have all increased spending. They have all increased the debt. The Republicans just had control of everything. They increased spending, they increased the debt. This has been exacerbated, by the way, by forced business closings during COVID. These are probably unconstitutional, but they messed up our supply chain and it contracted the number of goods. When you print more money and throw it in the economy and you reduce the supply of goods, what you get is out of control inflation. And no, you can't just pass more spending and call it the Inflation Reduction Act and think you are going to fix inflation. You know what fixes this? Free markets. That's what raises standards of living. We need to cut taxes. We need to cut spending. We need to cut regulation. We are stealing from future generations. It's obscene, it's immoral, and it needs to stop.
All right, Mark, thank you very much.
So Mark Kelly seems unprepared and shaky. Blake Masters is a lunatic and looks 8 feet tall on the stage. And the libertarian guy seems like a nice guy. He'll be lucky to get 1% of the vote, so kind of a non-factor.
COVID-19. Schools had to shut down. Businesses shut down. Across Arizona, we have 500,000 small businesses. You know, sometimes the federal government has to step in to save small business. You know, they have to step in to protect livelihoods. You know, my office, folks that work for me, you know, are very active in helping small businesses like Tres Leches Cafe in Phoenix stay open. Or in Tucson. We've got to get our debt and deficit under control. That's why in the Inflation Reduction Act reduces the deficit by hundreds of billions of dollars. At the same time, I was able to stand up to Big Pharma and cut the prescription drug costs for seniors, capping it at $2,000 a year, spread out over the year. This is something my opponent, Blake Masters, has opposed. Seniors are struggling. Social Security and prescription drugs hits them harder than anybody else. And my opponent, Blake Masters, wants to privatize their Social Security, sending that money to Wall Street.
My opponent is absolutely enormous. Do you see the size of this guy?
Did we not need money to be printed considering the COVID pandemic that we were dealing with? That's what I'm hearing here.
Joe Biden is spending like a drunken sailor, and at every single opportunity, Mark Kelly just says yes. He can't say no to Chuck Schumer. He can't say no to Joe Biden. At least Senator Sinema stopped Build Back Better. My gosh, you were ready to vote for that. That would have just ruined our economy even worse.
Is Blake Masters Canadian? Does anybody know?
Mad at her for that, but hey, isn't it interesting that you had to wonder which way she was going to vote? you never have to wonder which way Senator Kelly is going to vote, because any spending bill that Biden puts in front of him, he will sign. So yeah, we got the Inflation Reduction Act, and Mark Kelly was the deciding vote. He hired 87,000 new IRS agents. Mark Kelly voted to send stimulus checks to illegal aliens. He voted to send stimulus checks to, get this, violent felons sitting in jail. Is that a good use of taxpayer money? I don't think so. Think about that the next time you go to the grocery store and you can't afford to buy steak or eggs.
Let me get a response to that.
That's not true.
Which part?
Well, a lot of it. But the IRS part,
a lot of it.
We need folks in government to go after big businesses and the wealthiest Americans who try to cheat on their taxes, that have armies of accountants and lawyers. That's the intention, here, because if we can't collect taxes from the wealthiest Americans and the largest corporations, they're cheating on their taxes. You know who pays? Middle-class Americans.
All right, Mark Kelly's warming up.
He said it himself. He wants 87,000 IRS.
Hold on for just a second.
You're going to get a second.
Hold on.
So relax. So, what he is proposing is a system that, the little guy has to pay more. Middle-class Americans and working-class Americans. We need to make sure that big business, and it's pretty obvious when you look at the background of each of us. Okay. With regards to things like, ethics reform and corporate PAC money, I've never taken a dollar of corporate PAC money my entire time in the last campaign. And
I'll stick up for the little guy because I am the little guy. Look at the size of this guy next to me.
Up for Arizona.
We need to stop you right there. All right, again, response.
Can I have 45?
Yes, you do.
The people of Arizona know that those 87,000 IRS agents that you're sticking on them, they're not just going after billionaires.
Lie.
They're not just going after big business. They're going to be auditing you. They're going to be auditing your small businesses this time next year. Senator Kelly voted for 87,000 new IRS agents from the Inflation Reduction Act. But to do that, first he had to reject, there was an amendment, he rejected hiring 18,000.
Remember, 55,000 of the 87 are just to replace retiring people over the next 10 years. This is a very small increase to the size of the IRS, and needed, by the way, to audit those that are taking advantage and not paying their fair share.
Priorities are Mark Kelly left our southern border wide open, voted for all the trillions in spending that caused this massive inflation, and he thinks the fix is 87,000 new IRS agents. Something tells me that's not going to work out.
I want to get Mark in here for a second. I want to get back to you.
Thank you, Ted. I want to speak up on behalf of the drunken sailor. Because drunken sailors, there's a limit to how much money a drunken sailor can spend. That isn't the problem here. The problem here is we don't have sound money anymore in our country.
Oh, God.
That's the reason these guys are bickering about spending more and more and more money, because there is no limit to how much our government can continue to print and spend. We need to get back to sound money again so the government can't continue to have no limit on their credit card. That's the problem with our economy. There are always things to spend more money on. There will be a never-ending list. Do we want to get a control on our economy? We need to get back to a free market in sound money.
Okay, Mark, go back. The idea of IRS agents over border agents.
Well, I've spent a lot of time on our southern border, and let me just say, it's a mess. It's a chaos. It's crisis after crisis. I worked in Washington to bring more Border Patrol agents to the state of Arizona. $1 billion for staffing and security and monitoring systems. So this premise that he's taken, voting against Border Patrol agents, I've worked hard to make sure we have the money so we have more Border Patrol agents on the ground, and that's what we have today.
Respond, please.
Okay. Did you or did you not vote to reject 18,000 more Border Patrol agents in the Inflation Reduction Act passage?
Senator.
There it is, right there.
There are votes that happen in D.C. that have nothing to do with Border Patrol agents, and it might have the title on it, and nothing happens, right? So what I have done is I got $1 billion more for Border Patrol agents for staffing, for the technical systems to monitor the border. And where they make sense, to build more border barriers at the southern border.
Are you joking?
That's my record.
Oh, boy.
I've been strong on.
I think what you need to say on something like that is there are all sorts of Border Patrol provisions we've been to unrelated bills by your party. I voted on this bill in the company.
That would create a bigger crisis. I told him he was wrong. So I've pushed back on this administration multiple times, and I've got more money on the ground to increase Border Patrol staffing, technology, and where it makes sense, to build more barriers.
It sounds like he says you're cherry picking here.
He voted against hiring 18,000 more Border Patrol agents and then said yes to 87,000 new IRS agents. I'm sure we're going to talk more about the border. I just want to ask one question. Sir, have you done everything in your power to secure our southern border?
I've been focused on the border since day one on this job. I'm down there all the time. I was on the phone this week just, with Mayor Nichols of Yuma, Sheriff Daniels of Cochise County, talking about what more we need for Border Patrol and immigration.
That, my friends, is called evasion.
We're working to raise Border Patrol pay by 18%. I've got legislation to do that. I've been focused on the border since day one.
Okay.
To no great effect because we have a wide open southern border. So if that's the best you can do, I respectfully request you resign and let's get someone in the seat who will actually secure our border.
Washington, D.C. has failed on this issue of border security and immigration for decades. And it's been crisis after crisis. I've been focused on this since day one, and I brought more resources here to the state of Arizona to deal with this issue.
Let's continue to focus on immigration. We'll go 90 seconds here. Blake, we'll start with you. Immigration reform. I hear border security mentioned a lot. You have mentioned border security. You want to secure the border. How would you know when the border is secure? How do we know when the border is secure?
Well, call me old-fashioned, but I think the correct amount of illegal immigration is 0. That's what federal law says.
Remember, you could get rid of all Border Patrol, and then you could say, we're not catching anybody, so it must be solved. This is very dumb.
They've given it up to the Mexican drug cartels. We had operational control 2 years ago, and now it's just a complete disaster. They incentivize people to break the law. Illegal aliens, when they come here, they're supposed to be caught and deported back to their home country or back to some other country that wants them. But no, Joe Biden and Mark Kelly, they laid out the welcome mat. This is the greatest country in the history of the world. If you invite everybody to come here, you'll create a crisis. And so 5 million illegals, literally 5 million, have come here in the last 22 months. Joe Biden and Mark Kelly have welcomed them. When these people cross, they know not only will they not be deported, but they're given envelopes with cash, plane tickets. Here's a hotel room in Scottsdale. We treat these people better than we treat our own U.S. military service members. I find that shameful. 300,000 come through every month. It's a humanitarian disaster. The women and children are raped. The men are indentured servants sold into some kind of slavery. And it's not just the people, it's the drugs. The fentanyl that's coming through. It's killing kids. We're losing 2,000 Arizonans every year to fentanyl. This stuff is poison. It's coming right there up through the southern border, and Mark Kelly and Joe Biden have not done a single thing to stop it. It is carnage, and so I think we should secure the border. That means a wall. It means doubling the size of Border Patrol, and it means let's get back to deporting people who try to break into our country, something that Mark Kelly routinely votes against.
We'll get to Mark Kelly in a second here, but Mark Victor, as far as immigration reform
If the wall worked so well, why would you need to double Border Patrol if you do the wall? I don't get that.
Keep talking about this same problem. Administration after administration after administration, they're bickering about securing the border and spending money, but nobody ever gets it done. We need to get it done. I'm in favor of a comprehensive overhaul of the entire immigration policy. It doesn't have to be very confusing. We had a great immigration policy in this country in the late 1800s, early 1900s. In fact, we didn't even have a term, illegal immigration. There was just immigration. It wasn't a big deal. We welcomed immigrants to America. Most of the people who come to America, and I've been representing many of them over the last 28 years. The vast majority of them are great people. They come here to work, to pursue the American dream. But they should get nothing when they come here besides the right to peacefully pursue their happiness. Nobody has a right to live at the expense of another person. They should get no welfare or social programs at all. But we do need to immediately secure the border. Nobody has a right to aggress against anybody else, whether they're inside or outside the border. Let's try to keep the bad guys out. We should streamline the asylum process. It's ridiculous that it takes so long to get a reasonably simple hearing done. I am very pro-immigration. It's good for America. It helps our economy. We've got demographic issues as well. We need more younger workers. Can you imagine our situation? We got a huge labor shortage right now. We got lots of immigrants who want to work. We can't get a visa program so they can actually work. Let's get them to work. This is why Sheriff Hathaway in Santa Cruz County endorsed me, because I've got a plan. There is no perfect solution here, but we need a path to citizenship as well. I do not want to tear families apart who are here and working and are law-abiding. We should not be deporting.
That is time. 90 seconds, Mark Kelly. Immigration. Wow. Have you done enough as far as immigration concerns in Arizona, in the country?
You know, when I got to Washington, D.C., one of the first things I realized was that Democrats don't understand this issue.
Oh, God.
And Republicans just want to talk about it, complain about it, but actually not do anything about it. They just want to politicize that. And we heard this tonight from my opponent, Blake Masters. You know, he thinks he knows better than everyone about everything. And when it comes to border security, you know, I've been focused on this. And on immigration, yes, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We have tens of thousands of dreamers here in the state of Arizona that are as American as my own two kids. Got one daughter lives in Tucson, my granddaughter lives in Tucson. I think of dreamers no different. And my opponent, Blake Masters, on the other hand, he said he would never offer citizenship to dreamers. I think it's mean and it's fundamentally un-American. We need comprehensive immigration reform in a lot of different ways. I talk to farmers and ranchers all the time. Can't get the workforce they need under the existing visa programs. And they're really struggling. I mean, you look at Yuma and the food supply issues we have down there and the workforce issues of legal immigration. Legal immigrants coming across the border to work here in the state of Arizona, adding so much to our economy. But this issue gets politicized over and over again from people like my opponent, Blake Masters.
Politicizing the issue, not understanding the issue. Respond, please.
Oh, I understand it very well. I understand that Mark Kelly supports open borders. And that's why we have them. He's the 50th vote in the U.S. Senate. Joe Biden needed his vote. Mark Kelly, a year ago, could have dug his heels in and said, Mr. President, I'm not supporting a single thing, not a single spending bill, not a single piece of your agenda. Unless and until we get border security. Biden would have had to secure the border. Mark Kelly, if this is the result of Senator Kelly being focused on the border, my gosh, he's the most ineffective and worst senator of all time. The border's wide open. People are walking through by the hundreds of thousands. You know, if the Mexican drug cartel, these terrorist narcos, if they could vote in this election, every single one of them would vote for Senator Kelly because they get what they want from him, which is a complete wide open border, it's complete free reign. And again, the fentanyl is killing our children. He's not doing that gosh darn thing to stop it.
Respond,
yeah, the fentanyl is out of control, and it's heartbreaking. I've spent a lot of time down there on like Nogales and Yuma and Douglas. The head of CBP is Lupe Ramirez. And we've talked extensively about this. And he showed, you know, we've talked about how this gets smuggled through the ports of entry. Really early in my term in the Senate. So you know what I did? Back to Washington. I got the money appropriated to rebuild our ports of entry. You know why? Because right now, if you go down there, 12 lanes in Nogales as an example. Only one of those lanes has the technology, the X-ray machine, that can detect the fentanyl. When we rebuild these ports of entry, because of the work I've done in the United States Senate and getting this money to Arizona, every single one of those lanes will have the technology. Wow. But the only way you can do this is through bipartisanship. It's working together, working across the aisle to get things done like John McCain did. You know, my opponent, Blake Masters, he doesn't want to work with anybody. He doesn't even want to work with Republicans. You know, he calls Democrats psychopaths and that they're evil. That's not been the spirit of how Arizona senators work to the benefit of our state and our country.
Time on that, but I need a response from you on the idea of working with Democrats on cooperating across the aisle.
You might be able to work with Democrats like Sinema, Democrats like Joe Manchin. You can't work with Democrats like Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, Mark Kelly. No, there's something very wrong with people who don't want to enforce federal law, who don't believe in borders, and currently they don't believe in our national sovereignty because they've turned over the entire border zone to Mexican drug cartels, and it is killing people. It is killing Arizonans. It's ruining our state. It's ruining our country. He's not doing a darn thing to stop it. And the Border Patrol understands this. Go ask a Border Patrol agent what they think of Mark Kelly. 90% of them will tell you they're disgusted by what he's failed to do. That's why the National Border Patrol Council endorsed me. The Arizona Police Association endorsed me. It's time to get back to law and order. Let's just even try. It'd be bad enough if they were trying to enforce federal law and failing, but they've just surrendered. They've thrown their hands up and thrown our southern border wide open. It's killing people. I'm sick of it.
45 seconds, Mark Victor. Is the border open right now, and has it been turned over to cartels?
Of course the border is open right now, and people can come through. There's no question about that. But the answer here is we can walk and chew
This is so crazy. It's like, listen, my opponent, Blake Masters, doesn't actually believe in democracy when his guy loses and said abortion was a satanic ritual that people on the left do. He is out of his mind.
Them. We are a nation of immigrants. We have a demographic problem right now. We need more younger workers. And also, just a quick point on civility. We need to get back to civility. We shouldn't be calling each other names and arguing across the aisle. I agree with what Senator Kelly said here. We need to work together. People who disagree still can be agreeable. Let's sit down and have an exchange of ideas and speak like gentlemen rather than arguing and calling each other names like kids in a sandbox.
All right. I want to move to abortion. Senator Kelly, we'll start with you.
Here we go.
Would you codify Roe v. Wade?
Of course. Let me be perfectly clear. Arizona women have totally lost the right to make a decision about abortion. It's devastating. It's wrong. It's exactly what my opponent, Blake Masters, wants.
True.
Blake Masters has called abortion demonic.
There it is.
Religious sacrifice. He's even said that he wants to punish the doctors. He wants a national abortion ban that's so strict that even in the case when a woman is raped, she will not have the option to make this decision.
Right.
Now in a second, he's going to tell you that this isn't true. But folks, this is true. These are his words. He has supported state and national abortion bans that will deny the right for a woman to make this decision by themselves.
All right, here we go.
And that's what it's about for Blake. I mean, he's only saying this now, and he's probably going to tell you something totally different. And it's only because he's trying to win in the election. But that's what it's about for him. You know, he thinks that he should make these decisions for you. He thinks he gets to make these choices instead of you.
Blake Masters, 90 seconds here regarding a federal ban on abortion, codifying Roe v. Wade. Where do you stand?
I'm pro-life, and that means I believe in limits. Now, I support exceptions because I don't believe in being extreme on this issue. Senator Mark Kelly is the abortion radical. Senator Kelly in Washington, he voted, actually he sponsored. He didn't just vote for it, he sponsored a bill that would have mandated legal abortion nationwide, get this, up until the moment of birth. Take a second to think about how truly radical that is. Mark Kelly says any abortion is okay for any reason, all the way up until the moment a baby is due to be born. He wasn't the only radical who voted for that bill. He was joined by Elizabeth Warren, by Bernie Sanders. AOC voted for this in the House. And the only countries in the whole world that support Senator Kelly's preferred no limits, extreme abortion policy are China and North Korea. So no, I'm pro-life. I believe in limits. I think we should be more like, I don't know, how about every other civilized country in the world? What? Just last year, Arizona passed a law that limits abortions after 15 weeks. I support that law. That's where Arizonans find a reasonable place to draw the line. I support limits at the federal level, too. Senator Lindsey Graham has proposed a 15-week bill with the common exceptions, and I support that. I believe in limits. Mark Kelly believes in no limits at all. I understand why he wants to lie about my position, because his own which is on the record. He sponsored that legislation up until birth. That is so truly radical. 80% of Arizonans are disgusted by that. So I'm going to represent the vast majority of Arizonans on this issue. He's proven that he can't.
Need a response.
It's nonsense. And what he's saying is absolutely not true. I've always been clear on this. I support the restrictions and the protections that were allowed under Roe v. Wade. And abortion only happens, very late in pregnancy when there are serious issues. And folks, it's heartbreaking when this happens. And often the child is wanted. But my opponent, remember what he has said. I mean, he supports a national abortion ban.
I just told you I didn't.
Criminalizes, you're going to get your chance, that criminalizes this decision. He has said, and this isn't like years ago, he has said very recently that he wants to punish the doctors. He's called abortion demonic, a religious sacrifice. I don't even know what that means, folks. But what I'm doing is I am protecting your constitutional rights that you have lost.
I don't even know what that
means. Rhetoric like this.
But real quickly, where do you draw the line on late-term abortions?
Well, under Roe v. Wade, there were protections and there were restrictions that were allowed under that law. And late-term abortion in this country only happens when there's a serious problem. And, that's what I support. And what he says about the legislation that I voted on is just not true. And it's nonsense. And he should go back and take a look and read this. I mean, he's a lawyer. This is legislation. He can go take a look at it.
Blake, you have said that you once espoused the federal personhood law. This is a quote from you, unqualified pro-life from conception, and that it has been noticed that some of these more strident positions were taken off of your website. Some
Correct.
say that you scrubbed them from your website.
Recently.
What's going on with that?
I encourage people to go read my website now. It is still the most pro-life, most detailed agenda.
Read it now without all the crazy shit.
Wide. I'm pro-life. I'm proud to be pro-life. I will never run from that. I think pro-life.
You're running from.
I'm pro-life as a matter of conscience. I just told you what I believe the law should be. Right in Arizona, as a voter, I support the 15-week law with all the exceptions. I believe in federal limits. I believe at a certain point, everybody of good conscience knows. 5 months, 6 months, my gosh, 7 months? That is a baby. And we shouldn't be killing babies for no reason when they can survive outside the womb. And that's not what his legislation did. They said they were trying to codify Roe. No, it was so much more extreme than that. They wanted to impose legal abortion nationwide up until the moment of birth. And that is way too radical. That's not what Arizonans want. Common sense limits. Arizona has said 15 weeks makes sense. I think that makes sense.
Before we get to Mark Victor, real quickly, have you always supported the 15-week limit?
Well, Arizona just passed the law last year, and Senator Graham just introduced the bill last month.
Right, but my question is, have you always supported that?
I couldn't support a bill 9 months ago if it was just introduced last month.
Not the bill, it's the limit. Have you always supported that limit? That kind of limit?
I believe Arizona's got the right to make its laws. That's the whole point of reversing Roe versus Wade. And I believe in a federal backstop. I think at the federal level, we should not be allowing late-term.
Like, no, my position has shifted 3 times during my campaign based on what I need to do and be able to say.
Save the life of the mother. I believe in limits. Mark Kelly doesn't. And that's the choice that Arizonans face in this issue.
Mark Victor, please.
Ted, this evasiveness from Blake Masters is exactly why you should have a principle and stick with it. You asked him specifically, did he scrub his website? And he said, you can go to my website now and look at it. That's evasion.
Right.
That's an answer that, yes, I'm not anchored in principle. I'm anchored in principle. My positions have been exactly the same for 30 years. Look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what my personal position is on abortion, and I'm not going to tell you. We need a policy that recognizes that reasonable minds disagree on this issue. People disagree. There isn't an objectively right answer. And these politicians offer no special wisdom at all.
True.
This is why a one-size-fits-all solution is a terrible idea. We're going to be fighting about it forever. Congress should stay out of it. So I'm in favor of having hard questions like this resolved in the smallest jurisdictions. That's right. Mesa should pass a law that the people in Mesa like, and the people in Tempe should pass a law that the people in Tempe like. Abortion should never, anywhere, under any circumstances, be outlawed in the case of rape or in the case of health of the mother. We don't have time to get into this, but I've written extensively on this and many other issues on my website. Regarding abortions after viability, if we can keep the baby alive, we should. It's a win for the baby. It's a win for the pregnant woman.
What if it has no brain?
Aaron, there is no perfect solution here. We're going to be fighting about it forever. We need the best solution to get past it, and that's put it in the smallest jurisdictions.
Dear
Stop
God.
fighting. And
Hey, I don't even think it should be decided by city. Each city councilor should be able to have a different abortion law within their little region of the city.
I think there should be a national law that protects the rights that women have to make this decision between them and their doctor. Let me be really clear about something you asked about, which was the personhood amendment. Now, folks, this is code. This is code for throwing women into jail. And that's what my opponent supports. Now, I think we all know guys like this.
Yeah.
You know, guys that think they know better than everyone about everything.
Yep.
You know, you think
And guys who think they're better because they're tall.
you even think you know better than seniors about Social Security, and you think you know better than veterans about how to win a war. Folks, we all know guys like this. And we can't be letting them make decisions about us because it's just dangerous.
Respond, please.
I think states should decide. Let the state legislatures wrestle with the tough question of how to regulate abortion early on. Texas is going to make slightly different decisions than California. It's going to make different decisions than Arizona. But I believe in a federal backstop. I don't think we should let California or Oregon let Planned Parenthood go in at 8 months and 30 days and sever spinal cords and dismember babies that his policy would allow. Unlimited abortion up until the moment of birth. He still can't articulate a clear limit. I believe in limits. Arizona has said 15 weeks is a reasonable place to draw the limit, and I agree.
I got to get a response to that, please.
Yeah, so, I mean, the protections and restrictions that were allowed under Roe v. Wade was the law of the land for over a century, or for 50 years. But what we have now, here in the state of Arizona, is a law from 1864. And it's exactly what my opponent, Blake Masters, wants.
But have you supported 6, 7, 8 month viability?
I have supported Roe v. Wade. You know, went into effect in 1973. This is a hard decision for women.
The answer should be, in my mind, should be something like, listen, when you say support, you want to make it sound like I'm going around suggesting people have abortions at 9 months. What I support is based on my understanding that there are rare but necessary situations for patients and doctors to figure out without an 8-foot-tall doofus getting in the middle of that decision.
Is making these decisions for women.
All right, I want to get to the election, and Blake, to start with you. Is Joe Biden the legitimately elected president of the United States?
Joe Biden's absolutely the president. I mean, my gosh, have you seen the gas prices lately?
Legitimately.
There's no doubt. I'm not trying to trick you. He's duly sworn and certified. He's the legitimate president. He's in the White House, and unfortunately for all of us, right? Because you know what? Yeah, Joe Biden's the president. He has been for the last 2 years. And everything he's touched in the last 2 years has turned, well, to you know what? Everything's on fire, and it's Joe Biden's fault. I wish he weren't the president.
We're at full employment.
That's a problem. Now, how did he get there? Okay, let's talk about that. I think it's a problem that the FBI forced Facebook. They pressured Facebook and other big tech companies to censor true information about Hunter Biden's crimes in the weeks before the 2020 election. And so millions of Americans didn't get to read about that, didn't get to read about Hunter Biden's corrupt business dealings with China and the Ukraine. Business dealings which credibly implicated Joe Biden. And then the media lied to us about it. They said, oh, that was Russian disinformation. No, it wasn't. It was true. And so when the media is lying to people, helping big tech and apparently federal law enforcement censor information about presidential candidates, well, I think people start to worry about the integrity of their elections. And we need to do so much better. I believe in election day, not election season. In Brazil,
does that apply to Trump?
I think on Sunday. Guess what? They counted the votes, and we got to know who won that night. And here's another thing I believe that Mark Kelly doesn't. I believe in universal voter ID. Call me old-fashioned. I think that if you want to cast a vote in Arizona or America, you should have to show an ID. That's common sense. And I'll stand up for common sense election integrity every single time.
I need to follow up quickly. Was that election stolen? Was it rigged in any way, shape, or form enough to keep Donald Trump out of the White House?
I suspect that if the FBI didn't work with big tech and big media to censor the Hunter Biden crime story, yeah, I suspect that changed a lot of people's votes. I suspect President Trump would be in the White House today if big tech and big media and the FBI didn't work together.
Now understand that before this, he has said crazy things about the election.
Yeah, I haven't seen evidence of that, but I'm telling you what I think the problem is. I think the problem is big tech, big media working together.
Right. Okay.
I think that's a problem.
Okay.
I challenge Mark Kelly to say that's a problem.
We will in just a second. Mark?
Boy, for a guy who's never been elected before, he sure sounds like a politician to me. I'll answer the question. Joe Biden won the election. I wish they both could have lost. We could use somebody up there who could have done something different. But look, this is an easy one. All people of good faith want a free, fair, accurate, open election. And we all want only people who are authorized to vote to actually vote. I have no problems at all with reasonable requirements to vote. You should be able to get an ID. They're free. If you can't get an ID, maybe you shouldn't be voting. That's not a big deal.
Right, but are the documents you need to get the free ID free and reasonably easily obtainable?
It's harder for people who should be allowed to vote to actually vote. But all of this is missing the big issue, Ted. This is not our problem. Our big problem with voting is that everything is up for a vote today. I don't want anybody telling me how I should use my body, my property, my money, in my time. None of that should be up for a vote. And I don't want to tell any of you how to use your body, property, money, or time. We are a constitutional republic, not an unrestricted democracy. Today, everything is up for a vote. Very little should be up for a vote. Like, for example, who should represent the good people of the state of Arizona? That should be up for a vote. What should the age of consent be? This is something that reasonable minds disagree on. That should be up for a vote. But everything else that we are voting on that has anything to do with your body, your property, your money, your time, that's what freedom is about, folks. None of that should be up for a vote.
Mark Kelly, are there serious concerns over Arizona's election process, over the country's election process that were exposed in 2020?
Ted, let me start by saying the only reason that we're having this conversation is because my opponent, Blake Masters, put out a video questioning who won the presidential election here in the state of Arizona. That election, let's go back to 2020, that was certified by Democrats and Republicans. Now, I'm with our governor on this, Doug Ducey, who says we do elections well in Arizona. And we do. 80% of Arizonans vote by mail. My opponent, Blake Masters, he just said he wants to take that away from you. Early in my Navy career, I was in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and I was able to vote in a presidential election. There's not a lot of countries you can do that. He wants to make that an impossibility for our Arizona veterans.
That's ridiculous.
Do you know how many veterans, how many people on active duty and veterans wind up getting deployed overseas? And that option would go away in his plan to just vote on election day. He mentioned voter ID. I'm okay with that. These are conspiracies and lies that have no place in our democracy. I'm worried about what's going to happen here, this election in 2024. I mean, we could wind up in a situation where the wheels come off of our democracy. And it's because of folks like Blake Masters that are questioning the integrity of an election. We do elections well in the state of Arizona. And, folks, it's got to stop. I encourage you to vote. Our democracy is stronger when everybody votes. My opponent wants to make that harder for everybody.
Are you trying to make things harder for people to vote?
I want to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. I want universal voter ID. He pretends to be okay with it. He wouldn't actually support it if it came to a vote in the United States Senate. Look, of course I support absentee ballots for military service members.
And for Trump.
It's ridiculous and just a flat-out, bald-faced lie to suggest that I don't. It's totally fine. I'm just saying, can we please count the votes and know who won on Election Day like a first-world country? Brazil can do it. So I think we should demand no less in the United States of America. But you notice
part of the reason we, quote, can't is because of the deadlines that are set by the states and the rules and different systems that each of the 50 states have. I mean, it's not a conspiracy.
Corrupt business dealings, China, Ukraine. They implicated Joe Biden. But that was all pushed under the rug. Millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people in Arizona didn't get to hear about that. I strongly suspect that changed the results of the election, and unfortunately for the whole country, because look how bad we're suffering after 2 years of Joe Biden and Mark Kelly.
Was it a question more of information not getting out or complaints that the election process itself is, quote, rigged and it allows for cheating?
We had multiple audits of the election here in Arizona in 2020. We had a partisan audit. What did they find? It was accurate. You know, I find it interesting that my opponent, Blake Masters, is standing up for veterans here for a second, because, you know, what I've heard during the last, year or so is just insulting to veterans. You know, it's kind of insulting, let me just say. You know, saying our military is totally incompetent, saying there's rot in the military, you know, saying things like, you know, we haven't been in a just war since before World War II. You know, folks, let me tell you what he's talking about here. He's saying that World War II was unjust. You know, we had hundreds of thousands of Americans die in that war. And I just find it pretty insulting. We've got about 500,000 veterans here in the state of Arizona. Many of them, you know, vote by mail. We've got 80% of Arizonans vote by mail. I imagine my opponent, Blake Masters, has voted by mail. And now he wants to take that away from us because he wants fewer people to vote. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Do you want to take away vote by mail?
No.
And hard stop, huh?
Well, I never said I did. No, look, some people have good reasons to vote by mail. If you're on an aircraft carrier in the Indian Ocean, that sounds like a pretty good reason for an absentee ballot, right?
What about a suburban housewife?
I'd be okay with that if she enclosed a copy of her driver's license. I think that if you want to cast a vote by mail, you should at least include a copy of your driver's license.
Didn't he earlier say everybody votes in person on Election Day?
This has been
Didn't he just say that?
80% of Arizonans vote by mail. This has been challenged in the courts. We have a stronger democracy when more people vote. We had a lot of people. We had a lot of people turn out in the last election. You know, highest turnout ever in the last election. Our governor, Doug Ducey, says we do elections well. These elections were audited and they were certified by Democrats and Republicans. But conspiracy theories, like the one he's peddling, is dangerous to our democracy, folks. I mean, we're on the verge of the wheels coming off of this thing. We've got to get back to a better place.
All right, you want to talk about the military aspect of what
Yes, there's a reason 57% of the veterans in Arizona are supporting me right now. 72% of active duty military service members right now in Arizona are supporting me. That's what my latest internal polling says. And there's a reason for that. Yeah, I speak out and I criticize General Milley. I criticize the top layer of military leadership, these very political. Obama did this, right? He purged the military of so many great generals, apolitical generals, and he elevated in their place left-wing mediocrities like General Milley. You've all seen at home General Milley testifying in front of Congress, bloviating about white rage, talking about how we need to teach our soldiers critical race theory. In the United States Navy right now, they are forcing sailors to use gender pronouns.
Remember that what Milley said is, we should know what critical race theory is.
Projecting force to defend America and her allies. Our service members who wear the cloth of the nation demand no less, they deserve no less. And when I'm in the Senate, I'm going to work with Tom Cotton to get rid of this wokeness. Yeah, it's a rot in so much of our military. Our troops deserve way better, and when I'm in charge, they're going to get it.
Veteran, talk to us here.
There's lots to talk about here. First of all, to say that because one general supported crazy wokeness in the military, and I certainly agree with Blake on this. This is not a place for political correctness. Our military exists to defend our country. But because one general said something ridiculous is not an indictment of the entire general officer corps throughout our military. I've had many interactions with Marine Corps officers, and I can tell you, very squared away group. I have nothing but respect for the...
If you think their view on pronouns is nuts, wait till they tell you about adverbs.
People who walked away from Donald Trump and the exact same policies that Blake Masters is now promoting, these were quality generals, and they had reasons to walk away from the exact same policies.
Okay, gentlemen, we're running short on time. We've got to talk about water, and I wish we had more time to talk about this. But Senator Kelly, we'll start with you. 45 seconds. Let's start there and see how far we go. We're facing short-term, long-term cuts of Colorado River water. How do we address this issue? And it is an issue.
Yeah, it's a major issue. I mean, this is the worst drought that this part of the planet has seen in 1,000 years. It's been going on 22 years. Lake Powell and Lake Mead are at crisis low levels. And we've got to take some immediate steps. I got money from Washington to help farmers keep water up in Lake Mead. That's just a stopgap measure. We can't do this all on our own. We're one of 3 lower basin states with Nevada and California. I was on the phone recently with the California governor because they're not stepping up to help. You know, my opponent's solution to this, he wants to privatize our water. He wants to send our water rights to Wall Street. He wants to send your Social Security savings to Wall Street, but our water too. And that's not a serious
We are running
approach to this
short on time. I need a response from you and a water plan. Can you do it in a minute?
I think I can. Senator Kelly recently gave a news interview where he said, don't worry, our water crisis in Arizona is not existential. Well, I disagree. I'm here to tell you that it is. I was shocked and dismayed a few weeks ago when the federal government cut Arizona's water allocation. 592,000 acre feet. For all you water nerds out there, that's a lot of water that the feds cut. That's our water. Guess how much California had to cut? 0. Guess what Mark Kelly did about it? Nothing. I'm tired of Senator Kelly acting like the 3rd senator from California. We need someone in there with sharp elbows who's going to fight for our water. The late John McCain called for the renegotiation of the 1922 Colorado River Compact. Let's renegotiate that. I will. But you know what? We also need technology, and I can wrap this up in 10 seconds, Ted.
Please do.
Why is California even putting its straw into the Colorado River? That water should be Arizona's. Look at a map. California is on the Pacific Ocean. The future is desalination plants powered by nuclear reactors and pipelines.
Okay.
We can solve this problem with technology and sharp elbows. I will do it.
How do you talk about water and not talk about the third element of the bathroom?
Elements of bathrooms. I got a few things to say on this.
It's got to be because we're running out of time.
I've had very little time during this debate, and I'd like to give an answer on this question.
But we're not going to be able to get heard if you go too long.
Let me incorporate some things that Blake said. Blake made some very good points on this issue, and I'm going to give him credit. We got short-term and long-term solutions. I'm here to tell you about hard questions. Almost 80% of our water in this state, in the middle of the desert, goes to agriculture. Sorry, that doesn't make sense. We can put our agriculture, we can get it from places where they can more efficiently produce these goods. The market price of water should determine.
And that is it, sir. I'm sorry, but we just ran out of time. We've got to get to closing statements.
Now, we're out of time.
And going in reverse order of our opening remarks. We start with Mark Kelly.
Yeah, let me just say something. What my opponent said about being existential. It's not existential. We're going to solve this problem on water. I think what folks heard tonight here were starkly different views of our state and our country. Yeah. On abortion, my opponent wants a national abortion ban, taking away your rights. I'm going to protect abortion. I'm going to protect your constitutional rights. On Social Security, he wants to privatize it, sending your savings to Wall Street. On issues of the military, I served in the United States Navy for 25 years. I love our military. He says some pretty insulting things about our military. We have 500,000 veterans that live in the state of Arizona. Serving in the United States Senate has been one of the highlights of my professional life, which has been all about service, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you, sir. Now the closing statement from Mark Victor.
Thank you, Ted. Ted, I'm running for Senate to leave the world better than I found it. We've been on the wrong course for a long time. We have very serious problems coming, and we're at a critically important time in our history. Both the Republicans and the Democrats have given us a stalemate of ineptitude. They're recycling yesterday's ideas. How long are we going to accept their failed approaches? We can't solve these problems with the same old thinking. There is a way out of this mess. Let's focus on fundamental, timeless principles. Nobody gets to force their way of life on anyone else. Let's lead and inspire people to be good humans.
Time, sir. Time, sir. That is it.
It still says I got 15 seconds there, Ted. I like to finish my closing statement.
They told us that it was over. Finally, we hear from...
They told us it was over.
Biden and Mark Kelly.
Who? Who did they told us it was over?
Everybody knows it. You are less safe today.
The clock still had time on it. They cut him off.
Kelly took over. He's got a bunch of excuses. I think you heard a lot of them here tonight. You know, it's up to you to decide whether excuses are enough. But ask yourself, do you deserve a secure border? Do you deserve to feel safe when you walk outside at night? Do you deserve to be able to afford your own home if you work hard enough? I think the answer is yes. You deserve so much better than what we have. Mark Kelly disagrees. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent 2 years backing Biden every time. Send me to the U.S. Senate if you think that you and your family deserve better so we can go in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all for the debate. We appreciate it.
What the hell? They told us it was over. The clock still had time. They cut him off and then they go, they told us it was over. What's over? That guy's time? It's crazy. What an insane. I mean, by the way, all of that being said, way better than the Beto Abbott debate. Like at least 90 seconds and 45 follow-up instead of, you know, hey, you got 7 seconds to give. That was wild. That was really, really wild. Overall, we're not learning like a ton from these debates, as you can probably imagine. All right, I had one other clip before the debate. This is from one of our favorite shows, the Stu Peters channel thing, I guess. And I guess the hurricane was some kind of globalist plot.
To Florida, the governor, Ron DeSantis, has not been complying with vaccine. He's not been complying with this climate change agenda that the rest of the deep state and shadow government has been going along with and pushing. He's not been complying with the sanctuary state, illegal immigrants. Florida is booming. It's successful. So many people have been moving there, and you know the economy has boomed. They didn't shut down during COVID.
Oh my God!
And of course,
this guy on the right. I've interviewed this guy on the right. I'm gonna pull up my old school. Okay, let's watch this. This guy is nuts. Check this out.
Right before a major election, too, 1 month away. It just seems to me that, what better way to bring Florida to its knees, this booming economy, this booming state, let's bring it to its knees with a hurricane. Is it possible, first of all, for them to do that? And secondly, I want to know what makes this hurricane, in your eyes, what are sort of the hallmarks of a manufactured hurricane?
Yeah.
I can say definitively, that storm, Hurricane Ian, was absolutely, positively steered, period. We recorded the animations of ground-based radio frequency microwave transmissions. I challenge your listeners to just look at what we have captured.
All right. I can't even take it. I interviewed this guy. Let's see when it was. Feels like it was a decade ago. I interviewed this guy. No, it was earlier than that.
Stranger. We're not strangers anymore.
No, it wasn't 2017.
You can call
Let's
me
see,
Elsie.
which studio was this?
Or Elizabeth.
Oh, I guess it was 2017. Wait, no, it wasn't.
Okay.
Here we go.
Elizabeth it
Okay,
is.
check this
But
out.
I
Oh no, it
prefer
was like
Ghost.
2013. Just check out a little bit of this,
So,
okay? Let's
what's
listen
our
to it.
plan?
This is wild stuff.
May not know what these are. Let's just start there. What are chemtrails?
Chemtrails is a layman term, David, for geoengineering, which is climate engineering, also known as solar radiation management. So in this case, the science terms are very important. Semantics are important so that people find hard science data and not conspiracy theory. So this is an attempt to modify the Earth's climate systems. There's a number of stated reasons for this. Again, one is solar radiation management. That would be a primary reason stated by numerous patents. We have about 150 patents on these programs, and we have global governance documents from Congress, UN, and so forth. So the primary stated purpose, David, is to slow a runaway greenhouse effect by filling the atmosphere with light scattering reflective particulates. In this case, we're talking about heavy metals. The primary element is aluminum. So these programs are quite damaging to the human health.
Now, all of this has been completely debunked.
Organism and the climate system as a whole. So
And how are these elements dispersed? I think that's a key question.
Aircraft disbursement. Yes, this is intentional payload disbursement from aircraft.
Obviously, guys. Come on.
There may be some method of disbursement by mixing additives and fuel, but we have patents, film footage of spray disbursements with material coming out of nozzles on aircraft. So this is an intentional effort to saturate the atmosphere with reflective light scattering particulates.
This is one of the main chemtrails guys. Dr. Stephen Novella writes about this guy in his book.
Particulates for the purpose of solar radiation management.
And again, speaking in layman's terms, when we see often for people to kind of link this with what we see sometimes on the internet, are those images where we sometimes see what seem to be streams of either air or liquid coming from the back of an airplane? Is that what we're talking about here?
It is. And people have been led to believe that anything you see in the sky is a condensation trail. And quite simply, the science doesn't hold up in this case. People should be able to distinguish for themselves. When you see a grid pattern one day and nothing the next, obviously there's something going on.
Right.
We know from the type of jet engine on most of these aircraft, David, a high bypass turbofan jet engine, which we have a tutorial on geoengineeringwatch.org so people can see how this engine functions. For all practical purposes, it's incapable of putting out a condensation trail except under the most extreme circumstances. So we have film footage of this happening at altitude. People can view these videos at geoengineeringwatch.org or other.
This gets completely bonkers.
Sites. So we know that they're spraying from aircraft.
So let's go through a couple pieces. First, just you mentioned that we want to separate this from conspiracy theories, and I think it's interesting to use that term because some people do consider this a conspiracy theory. So first, just to provide some context for the audience, are there other so-called conspiracy theories that you subscribe to? In other words, do you believe that the U.S. Landed a man on the moon, for example?
You know, I'm not researched in other areas, and I'm not.
Here we go. Ding.
I don't want to go into those areas because I'm not researched and I have no opinion. I can only state in this case we have film footage of it happening, so there's no theory involved. We have about 100 lab tests in Northern California, hundreds from across the globe that show that these metals are falling down on us, raining down on us.
No, but Dane, I don't want to interrupt, but I want to get to that, but just to push back a little bit on this, in preparing for this interview, it seemed like on June 6th, on the USA Prepares radio show, you did say that you found it incredibly unlikely that we landed anyone on the moon and that we sent a buggy up there.
Here's what I said, David. I said this.
Here's where he starts to get irritated with me.
That I think it's interesting that we could leap up there in 1969 and nobody's been back. That's all I said. And that's all I will say. And I do find that interesting. I think it's interesting that nobody's ever been back, but that's all I said.
Okay, good. No, I just want to make sure that all the information I have is accurate and that you did address that on that program and you're saying that you did. So let's get now, I want to get into some of the specifics though of the chemtrails.
No, I hope it's clear that that's all I said. I mean, I do find that interesting and I stand by that.
That's perfectly fair. Yeah, no, we're not going anywhere beyond that. I want to talk first, there's just so much of this, you know, and as a layman, it's hard to wrap your mind around everything related to chemtrails. I want to first talk a little bit about the aluminum specifically, right? The claims about aluminum. I did some research about this and I went into it with an open mind. And what I found was that there are some air analyses that have been done. For example, one from Phoenix, which show levels of aluminum and barium that are so high that if the test were accurate, we would all be dead. That was kind of one set of studies that I found. I don't even remember these parts. This is pretty good. And then the other set of studies that I found showed that while there were some levels of these heavy metals in the air, that they were equal to or lower than what we would consider kind of the normal levels that are not in any way a red flag and don't suggest that any have been added. So how would you counter that data?
Well, I can't speak for a test in Phoenix that I didn't do, but I can speak to tests in Northern California, some of which were done by U.S. Forest Service biologists whom I work with, and all of these tests were done at the state-certified lab. There's a massive amount of aluminum, barium, strontium, other metals falling down in our rain. Now, if this was normal, David, it would not affect aquatic insect life as it has in Northern California. In fact, we've seen a 90% decline, 90, of aquatic insect life in Northern California, 90% terrestrial insect life decline. We've seen aluminum escalate in the rain tests from a baseline that was already high of 7 parts per billion to 3,450 parts per billion in a single rain event. This is highly toxic rain. There's nothing normal about this, and people have been led to believe aluminum is abundant, so it's common to find it in the rain. This is absolutely ludicrous. Aluminum is always bonded to other elements. It should not be in our rain unless you live in a Sahara dust storm And quite simply, it wasn't there before. The aquatic insect life would have already been dead.
Now,
It's dead
Dane, as a scientist, if the and I ask this question not rhetorically, but because I want to learn from you, if these numbers are indeed accurate from Northern California, as you state, how, as a scientist, did you look beyond the correlation of that data and actually link beyond a reasonable doubt the reduction of aquatic insect life to so-called aluminum that has been released by airplanes in the air? How did you link those two things to go beyond simply correlation and to causation?
This is what we've always called for, David. When we know this metal's falling on us, we know it wasn't there before. We know from California Air Resources Board it's not coming from China, as a lot of people would like to assume.
It's not coming from China, it's coming from planes. You know that, right?
And we know it's in extremely toxic levels, so much so that it's changing force floor pHs 10 to 12 times toward alkaline. We know this as well.
All right, so that's kind of like a gist of it. Let's go a little bit later on where he really gets agitated with me and just kind of like see where we're at. You can see the whole thing online if you want.
Be considered a traditional commercial or transportative airplane flight pattern, that they could be doing other things, which in my research, again, this is just my research, going into this with an open mind, have all been identified, right? Sometimes these so-called chemtrails are. Hold on a second, Dane. Hold on. Just please let me get the question out.
No, I don't think that you're trying to be objective here when you refuse to use the science terms. I don't think that's being objective.
Tell me the term I should use, and I'll phrase my question in that
Climate engineering, stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection.
But those terms imply proof of something that I haven't seen proof of. So can we find a term that would be more neutral we can use for what
Climate engineering, that's what we're talking about.
No, but unfortunately, let me pick a term that I think is maybe more neutral. Can I call them so-called chemtrails? Would that be fair?
You can't possibly believe I would think that that's being objective. Of course I don't. This is stratospheric aerosol geoengineering. You have a mountain of science to back it up. And if you use the terms you're using, you come to conspiracy theory on Wikipedia instead of hard science. And it seems that's the primary tool the journalists use to try to discredit an issue that has a mountain of science to back it up.
I don't know about that. I didn't use Wikipedia at all for my research. The point I'm kind of going to is this. In my research, Dane, and again, just let me get the question out, and I've provided you certainly time to respond here. It seems to me that all of these visual phenomena, let me call them that some in your field call stratospheric geoengineering, have been explained as a combination of, and I'll just state this and then you'll have a chance to respond, fuel dumping, smoke generators to study wake vortices, tankers that release fire retardant for fighting fires or training for fighting fires, some engines release exhaust, some airplanes have flares, and then, as you mentioned, there is the maybe albeit rare but existent condensation. So what proof do we have, and when I say proof, I mean actual proof, that this is aluminum being deliberately released for climate engineering purposes? What proof do we have?
Well, first, David, when you say that we should feel better about something being a fuel dump, as if that would make things any better, I don't find that.
So he's kind of saying like, hey, you know what? Maybe it's a fuel dump, but that would be bad too.
Any better. And two,
but that's a different argument.
When we have film footage, you don't dump fire retardant at 30,000 feet, okay? When you have military aircraft on film spraying from nozzles, and you have the same material listed in those patents showing up on the ground, I challenge anybody to look at the data. And when you talk about your research, I don't think that it's really qualified as research to say you observed a few trails of the airports near you. We've done years of hard research. We have film footage of this happening. We have numerous lab tests. We have science documents. In fact, let's go back to 1966.
All right. Anyway, you guys get the point. He later wrote an article about how unfair I was to him, which is actually very Trumpy, even though it was years and years before Trump. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Next debate is someday next week. We've got 1 or 2 Trump rallies between now and then, and the new podcast tomorrow, and the Pacman Finance channel, and, you know, all these different things. So we'll see everybody very soon.
Donald J. Trump has been a very loud, some might say too loud, part of our political scene for over 7 years now. And yet, I would argue that we as a political culture, as a media industry, as an American public, as a country, we still end up normalizing him, treating him as at most an extreme political figure, an oddball. On Saturday, he held a rally. Even that's not normal. Former presidents don't go around holding rallies, let alone ones that feature such politically destabilizing lies like declaring again that the last election was a sham. If that's not concerning enough, look at the kinds of dark and disturbing things he was saying.
Much of the crime wave is caused by drug dealers who, during their lives, will kill an average of 500 American citizens. Think of it. If you have a meaningful death penalty for drug dealers and traffickers, but if you have a meaningful death penalty, crime in our country will go down 80 to 85% in one day. One day. It'll take one day.
He also just sounded off, literally, going from subject to subject without saying anything that made sense.
We are a nation where large packs of criminals and thieves are allowed to go into stores and openly rob them, beat up the help, and kill people. They will kill people, and they kill them at will, if necessary, and even if not necessary. And there is no retribution. We are a nation whose once revered airports are a dirty, crowded mess, where you sit and wait for hours and then are notified that the plane won't leave.
And if it was just his rallies, it'd be bad enough, but everything he says and does, everything he types on his social media platform ends up being 1, dishonest, 2, offensive, or 3, dangerous, or 4, all of the above. It's crazy. As part of his latest feud, for example, with the top Senate Republican Mitch McConnell, which again, it's not normal to be having a feud between 2 top members of a political party. As part of that, the former president posted what appeared to be a death threat against McConnell on his quote-unquote Truth Social website, literally saying McConnell had a death wish for backing Democrat-sponsored bills. Trump went on to use a racial slur against McConnell's wife, who is his own former transportation secretary, Elaine Chao. In another post, he railed against New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman and her new book, On Him. Quote, another fake book is out, supposedly very boring and stale. In it, Maggie tells many made-up stories with zero fact-checking or confirmation by anyone who would know, like me. That's not just an indecent and bizarre thing for a former president to say and do. He's also flat out lying in that post. Maggie Haberman responded to Trump's comment on Twitter, sharing a photo of Donald Trump's own handwritten responses and comments to questions Haberman asked him for her book. So much for zero fact-checking. Donald Trump lies like the rest of us breathe. And ever since his election defeat, some of the nation's top political reporters have been documenting many of those lies in best-selling books, books that include interviews with the former president himself, in which, again, he lies. Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America by Maggie Haberman came out Tuesday morning. In it, there are multiple revelations that remind us why he's so unfit for high office, like the reporting that Trump talked about bombing drug labs in Mexico, that he asked Rudy Giuliani to, quote, do anything to overturn the 2020 election, and that he flushed White House documents down the toilet. I could go on and on, but it's actually a never-ending list. Haberman's book is one of dozens on this topic of Trump and his fitness, or should I say manifest unfitness, for office. Another very prominent book just came out a few weeks ago, The Divider, written by the husband and wife team of Peter Baker of the New York Times and Susan Glasser of The New Yorker. Through conducting more than 300 interviews, including, yes, with Trump himself at Mar-a-Lago, they detailed just how dangerous the 45th president's full 4 years in office were. From him almost going nuclear with North Korea, to wanting to shoot down Iranian missiles over Iran, to using the power of the United States federal government to go after his own perceived enemies, CNN and Jeff Bezos' Amazon. As The Guardian's review of their book puts it, their narrative is riveting, their observations dispiriting. So what's it like to report on and interview someone like Donald Trump? And what is our media still not getting right when it comes to covering this former president who is so extreme and so abnormal? Joining me now to discuss this is MSNBC analyst chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, Peter Baker, co-author of that astonishing book that I mentioned, The Divider, Trump in the White House 2017 to 2021. Peter, thanks so much for joining me on the show. Congratulations on the book. It is yet another reminder that Donald Trump is not a normal politician in charge of a normal political party. The normal rules don't seem to work with him. So I have to ask, how does someone like yourself, the chief White House correspondent for a newspaper known for demanding quote-unquote straight news coverage from its reporters, how do you go about covering someone like Donald Trump?
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Look, I think the trick to covering Donald Trump is to, in fact, focus on facts, because the facts tell the story. You don't need to change the rules of journalism. You need to apply the rules of journalism. The rules of journalism are we are supposed to provide readers and viewers with as rigorous an investigation of people in power as we can. So that's why we did this book. This is all based on reporting we did after he left the presidency. We tried, my wife and I both covered him for 4 years. We tried to get every story we could while he was in office, and we decided once it was over, there was still more to learn, and that, in fact, turns out to be the case. As you mentioned, we did 300 interviews. There turned out to be a lot of stories we never heard of, and stories that we did think we knew we'd learn more about.
It's well said to say focus on the facts, but it's interesting you say we don't need to change the rules of journalism. One of the unspoken rules of political journalism in this country is kind of sitting in the middle and treating both sides fairly. Some would say equally, and we can talk about that. I just wonder whether that's an appropriate approach when you're covering someone like Trump. You have covered more presidents than most reporters. You know more about presidents than I do or our viewers do. You would recognize, having written the book, that there's never been anyone like Donald Trump. There is no both sides to a President Donald Trump.
There's never been anybody like Donald Trump, and it's factual to say that, right? In other words, I don't think that rules of journalism require a false equivalence. I think the opposite. The rules of journalism require unblinking, straightforward, truth-focused look at what is out there in front of us, and not pretending that some things are equal or some things are the same. There has never been a president like Donald Trump. There has never been a sitting president who tried to overturn a democratic election, who told the public again and again something he knew or had reason at least to know was a lie about the stolen election. He was told by his own people, his own attorney general, his own elections chief, his own campaign aide. All of them told him there was no basis for this, and he went out there and told people this anyway. Not only told people this, he pressured governors and secretaries of state, his own Justice Department, members of Congress, and of course, ultimately his own vice president, to try to do something that they all knew was wrong. So I don't think we need to flinch away from saying that. I think that is journalism, and point that out.
So, Peter, I've got to ask, what was it like interviewing Donald Trump for this book at Mar-a-Lago, knowing that he is lying to you, that he's all over the place, that his brain doesn't work like a normal politician? What is that like? I'm genuinely fascinated. I'm never going to get an interview with Donald Trump. So I'm interested in what it was like for you. Did you feel like you needed to take a shower afterwards?
Look, he is not a reliable fact witness, right? So you do not go into an interview like this assuming you're going to get a factual recitation of what happened. You shouldn't ask me questions like, what happened at this meeting, who said what, and expect, a truthful, factual answer. It's not going to happen. Our friends at the Washington Post tabulated it, of course. They came up with a number of 30,000 false or misleading statements he made while he was president. Obviously, we can't trust his recitation of the facts. So you go into an interview like this more looking for mindset. You go into it looking to try to get him to talk about why he did the things he did. And the truth is, Trump is pretty transparent about his motivations. Other presidents who have done wrong things or done things that were controversial try to disguise it in some sort of pretense of altruistic motivations. Trump is very open about saying what he thinks and why he's doing what he's doing. He doesn't pretend to have altruistic, motivations when he's attacking his opponents or attacking the system. And most importantly, he's trying to turn the institutions of government into his personal instruments of power. And I think that's the most important part of our book. If January 6th was an aberration, it was the inexorable conclusion of a 4-year war on American institutions.
So, Peter, I was one of those people who bought the book by a bunch of psychiatrists in 2017 called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, all about his apparent mental health issues. But from your book, we learned that John Kelly, Trump's own White House chief of staff, also bought the book to read and thought it was a helpful guide to a boss who he came to consider as a pathological liar. Now, that's astonishing, even by Trumpian revelation standards. How shocked were you guys when you first uncovered that story?
Well, I think it's pretty shocking. It tells you that the people around Trump were the ones who were most concerned about him, most concerned about his erratic behavior, his volatile nature, the things he was proposing to do that were not ethical or legal or wise in their view. And that's what John Kelly, his second chief of staff, ultimately had to do. He figured to understand this, very unusual, to say the least, president. He felt he had to buy a book that suggested that Donald Trump is not mentally healthy in order to try to get it. And he wasn't the only one we discovered, by the way. Other cabinet secretaries and people who served and told us, again, after he left office, that, they worried that he was not mentally stable as well. One cabinet secretary said the debate was always, is he crazy, or just crazy like a fox? And they themselves were left trying to manage this sort of unstable, president, in their view, to try to save the country from, some reckless action that they thought would be dangerous.
Yeah, I felt incredibly vindicated when I read that part of your book, that even John Kelly went and got the dangerous case. Donald Trump. The previous book that you and your wife, Susan Glasser, wrote is a biography of former Republican Secretary of State and grandee James Baker. It's been described as a pretty pro-James Baker book. Baker, of course, is also the man who helped George W. Bush win in 2000 in Florida through all sorts of dodgy ways, many would say. And so I'm wondering, Peter, whether you see the GOP of Baker and Bush as completely different from the GOP of Trump, because there are many who would argue that you don't get a Trump without a Baker and a Bush, without the GOP laying the groundwork for him. And in fact, Baker voted for Trump in 2016.
He did vote for him, even though he told us he thinks that Trump is crazy. That was his word, not mine. Nuts. That was also his word, not mine. And I think that Baker's decision to vote for him is actually, a parable for the modern establishment Republican Party. Why they have decided to accept or embrace this person they don't themselves think is a good idea to have in the presidency. And it talks about our nature right now of our partisan country, where we stick in our tribes no matter what. Even if we have concerns the person we're voting for is an unstable non-genius, right? So then you can make the argument about the Bush-Baker era of Republicans leading to today, but there's a radical difference as well. I mean, look, in the end, the Florida case was about 500 vote difference. That's a legitimate question to litigate. Who actually won that in one state, by the way, and that one state would have made a difference. There was nothing like that in 2020. This was not Florida. And the difference is, by the way, that once the Supreme Court ruled in that 2000 case, even though a lot of people didn't like the ruling and thought it was bad, they accepted the outcome. Al Gore gave a very gracious concession speech and said, I don't like this Supreme Court decision, but George W. Bush is now my president. He didn't then try to summon a crowd or to hold on to power for the Democrats after the Supreme Court ruled. Similarly, George W. Bush then said, I am now the president of all people, not just the people who voted for me. Yes. Radically different points of view compared to what we've seen in the last few years.
Peter, one last thing before I let you go. As you know, there are a lot of critics, especially ordinary people who don't work in the media and who think it's wrong for top New York Times reporters like yourself or Maggie Haberman or Jonathan Karl of ABC News finding out important revelations about Trump or some Trumpian malfeasance or alleged crime and then holding it back for a book and not putting it immediately on the front page of the paper or the top story on a newscast. How do you respond to those critics?
Well, first of all, I would say that all the reporting that's new in this book was done after he left office, okay? We didn't hold anything back while he left office that people needed to know before the election. And by the way, he did lose the election. So any new revelations before the election wouldn't have changed the outcome if your hope was that he was going to lose. He did lose. But I think it's important for journalists and historians to go back and research what happened then, not to simply accept the narrative as we knew it during those 4 years. The newspaper stories in that era were good, but we didn't learn everything. There's still more to learn. So I think there's a value in book projects to go back and try to understand what really happened and put it in a larger context, which you can't do in a newspaper article. Now, if there's something truly urgent that has to be out immediately, we do put that in the newspaper and don't hold that back for a book. But I also think it's important to remember that, the revelations we've had in our book, have been out now. It's not like the world changed because they were out now. So I'm not sure what difference it would have made if they'd been out 3 months ago. I think there's a value in trying to put them together in something that...
Don't undersell your book. Your book has changed things in America. But let me ask you this. It's a fair point to say context and depth, and that everything you reported was from after the election. But some would say, for example, in your book, you have this great quote, a very important quote from Trump in the days after the election saying, can you believe I lost to this effing guy? He's basically conceding in private that he lost compared to what he's saying in public. Some might say, wouldn't it have been better for the 1-6 committee or even the DOJ, let alone the American public, to have learned that piece of information when you discovered it and not when the book came out last month?
Well, that's actually been out there before. We're not the first ones to report that. That's been out there in the past. And, you know, in the newspapers and other accounts that he, in fact, himself seemed at first to think he had lost. And only after the guys like Rudy Giuliani started filling his head with, you know, conspiracy theories did he sort of decide that perhaps he could still fight this and win. So, you know, you're right. Again, if there's something important that has to be out right away, we're going to put it in the paper right away. Don't worry about that. But I do think there's something lasting about a book that will still be on the shelf for 10 years from now and 20 years from now that a newspaper story can't do. And I think that that's something for history that's important. And this is also not just history, it's kind of prologue. I think if you look at our book and you want to understand what a second term might look like, look at what happened in our book with the things he tried to do, the things he wanted to do but couldn't do because he was thwarted by aides around him who resisted or talked him out or slow-walked him. He's going to have a different set of aides if he gets back in office. He's going to have a freer hand to do the things he didn't get done that he wanted to do in his first term.
Perfect Fire Poking Stick is a nice surprise. Perfect Fire Poking Stick is impressively versatile. Perfect Fire Poking Stick is now shoes. Those shoes are Hey Dude, good to go to.
Today, we have one job, and only one job, and that's to make sure the people of Florida get everything that they need to fully, thoroughly recover. We're one of the few nations in the world that, on the basis of the crisis we face, we're the only nation that comes out of it better than we went into it. And that's what we're going to do this time, come out of it better.
President Biden and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis put politics aside, at least for a day, as the president tours more hurricane damage and even compliments his potential 2024 rival. Plus, there's a new claim from the woman who says Herschel Walker paid for her abortion. Meanwhile, Walker doubles down on his defense that everyone but him is lying. Also ahead, what a dramatic cut in oil production overseas could mean for the price we pay at the pump. We have a lot ahead this morning. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Thursday, October 6th. Along with Joe, Willie, and me, we have U.S. Special Correspondent for BBC News, Patty Kay. Former Chairman of the Republican National Committee, Michael Steele, is with us this morning. And as always, the host of Way Too Early, White House Bureau Chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire. So we'll get to our top story this morning. Willie.
Yeah, it's front page of all the newspapers, pictures of President Biden and Governor Ron DeSantis together 1 week after Hurricane Ian made landfall in Florida. President Biden warning more storms will come. The president visited Florida yesterday, just days after surveying storm damage in Puerto Rico. In Florida, President Biden and Governor Ron DeSantis temporarily put politics aside as they met with residents in the Fort Myers area.
We were very fortunate to have good coordination with White House and with FEMA. But I think one of the things that you're seeing in this response, we are cutting through the bureaucracy. We are cutting through the red tape, and that's from local government, state government, all the way up to the president. So we appreciate the team effort.
I think he's done a good job. Look, I called in, I think before he called me when I heard this storm was on its way. We work hand in glove. We have very different political philosophies, but we work hand in glove. I've been to a lot of disaster areas in the last couple months, last 6 months. There's a lot going on. And I think the one thing this has finally ended is a discussion about whether or not there's climate change and we should do something about it. You can't build back to what it was before. You got to build back better because we know more is coming.
We'll have a live report from Florida in just a moment here on Morning Joe. So, Joe, it should not be extraordinary, but I think people were relieved, perhaps, that there was nothing political about yesterday. It was Joe Biden complimenting Governor DeSantis on the job he's done after the storm, and Governor DeSantis likewise nodding to President Biden in his role there.
Well, yeah. I mean, not extraordinary for most of our history, but extraordinary right now. And
I always thought that Chris Christie catching all the grief he got for hugging Barack Obama just showed the insanity of our political situation, because people don't understand that when you're in a hurricane zone, you always hear this nonsense about, oh, a president shouldn't come or a governor shouldn't come because we're busy clearing this or busy clearing. Let me tell you something. My first year in Congress, we had 3 hurricanes in Northwest Florida. I ran against Bill Clinton. When I was on the campaign trail, that guy was in every sentence. And you know what I found out when those hurricanes came? That when the President of the United States, be he or she a Republican or a Democrat, when they come into the middle of a hurricane situation, same thing with the governor, you know what? If you're having problems with FEMA, if you're having problems with SBA, if you're having problems with any of these government agencies, you got the president there. You say, Mr. President, we're having trouble. We're having trouble getting these SBA loans lined up. Or we've had some trouble with FEMA. They're not letting people go back out, even though it's safe out on the island. They're not letting them go back to their houses and see if they have any of their mementos left, to see how their house is, whether it's still standing up. You have the president or the governor there. If they're good at what they're doing, everything clears for you bureaucratically. So let me just say, this is such a good thing for people who have really taken a horrible storm, maybe the worst storm in Florida in decades. And Mika, it's a good thing that Joe Biden and Ron DeSantis were there and that they were cooperative and working together. And I hope that
we're here, stranger.
Everybody can look at that and celebrate it, just like we try to celebrate when there are bipartisan bills that are passed through Congress, despite all the craziness, the nonsense, despite all the anti-American talk about fake election results. These are moments that you grab hold to and say, this is how we tie the fabric of America together.
No, and critics of the Christie hug, I bet you none of them were near a hurricane zone. When people are hurting and people are desperate and their homes have been decimated, nobody wants to see anything but unity between a governor and a president. They do not want to see any daylight between them when it comes to getting their lives back on track.
The new iPhone 14 Pro, it's amazing.
And you'll get our best deal.
Nice. But every business should get it.
Every business can get it.
Every new customer.
Every existing customer.
Every iPhone.
Every iPhone.
Okay. My work here is done.
By the way, Joe, President Biden is getting a bit of encouraging news with just over a month to go until the midterm elections. The latest NPR Marist National poll finds the president's approval rating is up to 44%, the third straight month of improvement. Biden's approval among Democrats is at 87%, 39% among independents, and 6% among Republicans. But the poll has warning signs for Democrats as well, as 7 in 10 people think the country is headed in the wrong direction. Among the top issues voters say they are thinking about, inflation. And so I wonder, Joe, what you think. We talk about abortion being such a galvanizing issue, and I think I can count on many women coming out just for that issue. But inflation, that goes across the board.
Well, it really does. And I must say, Michael Steele, it's interesting. 3-4 months ago, people were saying, well, Biden's approval ratings are low, but the Democrats are doing very well. Now we have Joe Biden doing pretty well. There's also a morning consult poll that was out yesterday where Joe Biden's up to 46%. Democrats are doing pretty well in the generic ballot test. But what you're hearing in media, what you're reading in media about the top issues, about Dobbs, about abortion, being an overwhelming motivator this year, not showing up in polls. Now, I'm not, please, as Elton John said, don't shoot me, I'm only a piano player. Maybe it will be. Maybe, I suspect, probably like Kansas, women are going to be a lot more engaged than even polls pick up. But Michael, Man, if you look at one poll after another poll after, there are three issues. And you know what those three issues are? Inflation, inflation, inflation. And Democrats are going to have to deal with that. And by the way, below inflation is crime. So I know what everybody's saying, and maybe abortion will turn out to put Democrats over the top. I don't see it in these polls right now.
Well, no, you don't see it in the polls, and it doesn't manifest itself that way. And look, if the economy is the closest thing to everybody, abortion is a specific issue for this person or that person. Preserving democracy may be a specific issue for this person or that person. But here's the way you also have to look at this. While abortion or the democracy question may not be their number one, it doesn't mean it doesn't resonate, and it doesn't mean they're not going to vote on that issue. They may be concerned about inflation, and we've seen this, Joe. We've seen this trend line in the numbers. Voters are beginning to bifurcate and pocket how they're looking at these issues. Joe Biden is underwater, but Democrats are carrying the generic ballot, right? Joe Biden's numbers may be, below 50%, but Democrats in regions of the country are doing very well, particularly in competitive races. So these other issues, while they may not be number one, they're part of a broader set of issues that the voters are going to be looking at, and how they assess not just Joe Biden, but how they're assessing the Democratic candidates versus Republican candidates versus the Republican Party. So you take a national poll, yeah, inflation's number one, but how are those other issues sort of lifting up that issue or part of that issue in a way that voters go into the ballot box, they go, yeah, inflation's number one, but I'm really concerned about democracy too, and I don't like that candidate's position on democracy, and that weighs as much on how they vote.
Well, and there's a national poll, obviously, Willie, and we talked about it before. You can't really tell how the generic polls are going to play out, because Democrats may get a lot of support in states like California, New York, and perhaps that might inflate it a little bit. But it's a race by race, district by district, state by state campaign. You look at the state of Michigan and you look at Gretchen Whitmer. She is doing great because her opponent is extreme on abortion, says 14-year-old girls who get raped by their uncle are a perfect example of why she wants the state to force them to have the rapist baby.
Yeah, there was a new poll out 2 days ago that shows Gretchen Whitmer, Governor Whitmer, up by 15 points now in that race. A lot of that goes to the extreme language we've heard from her opponent, including the fact that she said rape can be healing to deliver the baby of the rapist. So that's not working in the state of Michigan, at least. Caddy K, inflation, that's the word that comes out of the mouth of every Republican candidate in this race, including around the story of Herschel Walker. We've got more details about that. Republicans say this is all a distraction from the cost of gas and groceries and from crime. That's all they want to talk about, and you can see why in a poll like this. Generally not good news to see high inflation and a wrong track number of 70% for the party in power heading into the midterm election.
Yeah, and we'll get to it later, but that news out of OPEC saying that they're going to cut oil production only is going to raise prices and raise inflation more. If we think back over the last few months, really, when was it that the Republicans were looking particularly strong and the Democrats were particularly on their back feet? It was when we had oil prices, gas prices at, $7 a gallon at the pump, and that was killing Democrats and Democratic candidates around the country. And although Joe's right, this is a state-by-state issue and it's a candidate-by-candidate issue, and if you're running against a very weak candidate like Gretchen Whitmer is, that helps you. But inflation is a countrywide problem, and you feel it in every single state that you're in. If the gas prices start creeping back up again between now and November, between now and polling day, that is only going to hurt Democrats in almost every state and every district.
Interesting, John, to see the use of President Biden now, too. He'll be in upstate New York today, visiting the IBM factory. And what a president with a 44% approval rating and 70% wrong track, what he can do or what he may not want to do for certain candidates in these races.
Yeah, it's a deliberate White House strategy to tout accomplishments. In this case, the Semiconductor Act, the CHIPS Act, is going to be able to talk about that done there in a swing district in upstate New York, as well as fundraise. He's got fundraisers in New York and New Jersey tonight. He's making money for his party. They think that's a better use of his time and travel than heading to some of the more competitive districts out there. White House certainly nervous. I know we'll talk about OPEC a little later. It's gas prices. Chief of Staff Ron Klain says he starts every day checking the price of gas. That's not going to be a great number. Republicans bullish right now. They feel like the national conversation is turning to the economy. It's turning to inflation. They think that's good for their candidates. They're briefing reporters on a daily basis saying, hey, we think we've got momentum. Democrats, though, they push back with this. They do think Dobbs is still an animating factor. The last couple of cycles, Republicans with Trump have had more success bringing new voters to the polls. Democrats think this time around it's them. It's new voters, new winning voters who come and vote Democratic in November.
My son was working at Tops in Buffalo when a terrorist came in and shot him and 12 others with an AR-15 he bought after he turned 18. No kid needs an AR-15. As we were healing, Chuck Schumer acted. He passed the most powerful gun safety law in 30 years. It'll keep guns away from dangerous people and it'll save lives. I'll take that over thoughts and prayers any day.
I'm Chuck Schumer, and I approve this message.
I mentioned Herschel Walker this morning. Another allegation against the Georgia Republican Senate candidate. The woman who told the Daily Beast earlier this week that Walker paid for her to have an abortion in 2009 now says she also had a child with him. If true, that claim would undercut Walker's defense that he did not know the woman who claimed to be an ex-girlfriend. The Daily Beast article states this, quote, when the woman first told the Daily Beast her story, we agreed not to reveal certain details about her identity over her concerns for safety and privacy. But then Walker categorically denied the story and said he did not know who was making this allegation. The report goes on to state, quote, the woman, a registered Democrat whose years-long relationship with Walker continued after the abortion, told the Daily Beast her chief concern with revealing her name was because she is the mother of one of Walker's own children, and she wanted to protect her family's privacy as best she could while also coming forward with the truth. The article goes on, Walker has publicly acknowledged the child as his own, and the woman proved she was the child's mother and provided credible evidence of a long-term relationship with Walker. Walker responded to the new report last night, providing NBC News with this statement, quote, as I've already said, there's no truth to this or any other Daily Beast report. Walker had already denied the allegation he paid for an abortion, calling it a, quote, flat-out lie. He's threatened a lawsuit against the Daily Beast, but has yet to file one. It's important to note NBC News has not confirmed the Daily Beast reporting on this.
So, the question is, how do Republicans respond to this? His campaign has raised more than $500,000 since his Monday appearance on Fox News, during which he denied claims he paid for a girlfriend's abortion back in 2009. And since the Daily Beast publication of the story, we continue to see Republicans rallying behind Walker. Here's Ted Cruz.
Represented by a Republican. Listen, I get it's real nasty. I believe Herschel Walker is going to be the next senator. I'm proud to support Herschel
But his
Walker.
own Senator Lindsey Graham also came out in support of Walker while slamming the media for attacking Republicans. And Senator Rick Scott, the head of the Republican Senate Campaign Committee, made similar comments. Joe, I'm not, and it's not even the claims of the abortion, which I think, at this point we have reports. He's denying them. That's where that stands. But the more information that comes out about things like this with Herschel Walker is they turn out to be true. It turns out he has more children than he claims to have. It turns out, he didn't manage hospitals, he donated. There's all sorts of twists and turns to his claims about himself. And Republicans just stick with him.
I don't get it. Michael, still, this is a new phenomenon. I mean, you ran the Republican Party. If you had a candidate who lied about his educational degree, lied about being in the FBI. Well, that'd be enough right there. Like pre-Trump, that would have finished a candidate right there. But then stories about how he put a gun to his ex-wife's head, lied about the children he had, has 4 children out of wedlock that his son says didn't raise a single one. This report comes up. Republicans are still backing him. This report comes up, and they're still supporting him. And now a follow-up where Herschel Walker said you didn't know this woman, didn't know anything about this, it wasn't true, and now we're finding out, according to the latest report, that, and my gosh, I would, based on the past, I would guess this report is accurate. There's a good chance, better than good chance that it's accurate, that actually she has one of his children that he's not raising. And the Republicans are still coming out saying that they're supporting him. I just, is there nobody in any of these members' offices saying, hey, boss, maybe you should back off a little bit here? Just let it stay its course, because there's no reason why these people should be supporting a guy this terribly flawed.
They're supporting him because the voters in Georgia don't care. They're not getting phone calls from people in Georgia or anywhere else screaming to back away from Walker. So they lean in. Look, this whole family values ruse of the GOP has been busted. They've cold-busted it. Democrats didn't expose it. They didn't expose the family values lie, right? Republicans exposed their own lie. You know, for 25, 30, 40 years, they've been telling people how to live, who to love, what to believe, when they themselves weren't applying those standards to themselves. And now that's exposed. And they don't care, because the only thing that matters is that Republicans get that Georgia seat. This is about power politics. They know they're going to have a sycophant in Walker who's going to come to the Senate and do whatever he's told to do, period. That's the only thing that matters. He's a vote on the board, and he's one more step to taking absolute control of the government. That's the game. Wonderful. And so it doesn't matter. You can have a picture of Herschel Walker, you know, engaged in all kinds of crazy stuff. You can have more women come out. You can have men come out. It don't matter. At this point, they don't care. There's no value here for them other than the owning of Democrats getting this particular seat. So until their voters are expressing concern and a lack of interest in the campaign because of these types of issues, they're going to lean in. Ted Cruz, all of them going to lean in. That's my guy. Yes, he's got how many kids? I don't know. I don't care, but it's a vote in the Senate.
So, Michael Steele, to build on your...
We get more done in less time.
This could be you. Achieve more with Monday.com. Try it for free.
You know, we have some interesting new poll numbers for President Biden and the Democrats with just over a month to go until these midterm elections. The latest NPR Marist national poll finds the president's approval rating is up to 44%, the third straight month of improvement. That's good news for the Democrats. The bad news, though, 7 in 10 people think the country is headed in the wrong direction. As for the top issues for voters, inflation continues to top the list. Joining us now, the chair of the DCCC, Democratic Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney of New York. President Biden will be visiting your district this afternoon. And Joe, the big question for the Democrats like Sean is, especially with the OPEC news and potentially gas prices and everything going up again, that could definitely be challenging for Democrats.
Yeah, definitely could be. And Sean, I'm curious about a trend that we're starting to see in Senate races. A New York Times report about the Wisconsin Senate race that's gotten incredibly tight. Things that the Democratic candidate said in Wisconsin, just like the Democratic candidate said in Pennsylvania a few years back about crime and, quote, defunding the police. Those exact words weren't used. But you saw firsthand in 2020 that down the stretch, that actually kept a lot of races a lot closer. The whole Democrat soft on crime argument from Republicans in the closing months. Of course, we understand, and we say it here all the time. You know, you can't be for beating the hell out of the cops, and you can't be for terrorizing FBI agents and their families and defunding the FBI and being pro-cop. But that, of course, doesn't stop shameless politicians from going back to that argument. So my question for you, and I know a lot of Democrats are asking this in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania across the nation, what's the Democratic response to that? Democrats are soft on crime. What's the response?
The talk is cheap, and we're going to fix these problems. The other side is seeking to exploit them for their own political power. We just passed out of the House a major local police funding bill that will provide assistance to police departments under 125 officers. That's every police department in my congressional district. Of course, we're the only party that supported law enforcement when we passed the rescue plan, which was $300 billion to local governments. That means every county, every town, every city and village in my district got help. That's what kept our first responders, cops, firefighters, healthcare workers on the jobs. So talk is cheap, but we know we have to take these lies and distortions seriously. That's the lesson from 2020. We're going to do it.
And that really is for people watching going, with you, why are you asking that question? Because you're right. The lessons, question is, were lessons learned from 2020? Sounds like again, there are a lot of those policies that all Republicans voted against that obviously can be pushed right back at them. Let's talk about inflation. We were talking about the Saudis jacking the price up, OPEC jacking the price up of oil, despite the fact it's been gas prices have been coming down, and they're not going to go back up to where they were before. Still, though, I know you've seen it in internal polling. I know all Democrats have seen it. Americans, yes, a lot of Americans really upset about the abortion ruling. A lot of Americans upset about democracy, upset about the denial of fair and free elections by a lot of Trumpists. That said, inflation is still, I'm sure in your district, a top issue as well. What's the Democratic answer to inflation, a runaway inflation?
Well, again, we're working the problem. They're working on their own power. Look, we don't disagree with the other side on lowering people's costs. What we disagree on is when we have a plan to bring down your prescription drug costs, which we passed into law, capping seniors out-of-pocket costs at $2,000 a year. All of the Republicans voted against it. When we have a plan to cap your child care costs at 7% of your income, the Republicans opposed us. And on gas prices, the president has released 90 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We're going after the big oil companies for price capping, and we're increasing domestic and international supplies. Now, that's a plan. The other side is trying to exploit these frustrations. But look, at what we disagree on is also your reproductive freedom. So while we agree that prices are too high and we need to do something about it, the fact is the Republicans disagree that you should make personal health care decisions for yourself and have ripped away 50 years of reproductive freedom. And that is motivating voters all over the country. And if you don't believe me, I'd like you to meet Congressman Pat Ryan and Congresswoman Mary Peltola.
So right on that line, Congressman, with abortion, the poll we showed from NPR and PBS, is immigration. This fiscal year, 2 million border arrests, by far a record in the history of this country. Do you agree that there's a crisis at the border? And if so, what should be done differently by this administration?
Again, we've got a plan to fix the border. We've had one for years. And we would start with helping dreamers, temporary protected status individuals, and farm workers, which is bipartisan, by the way, have legal status here in the United States. We would also enforce our asylum laws. We wouldn't put, moms and kids on a plane and send them to Martha's Vineyard, exploiting human beings for some political stunt. We take our laws seriously. People who come here legally and claim asylum have a right to have that adjudicated before a judge. So we can obey our laws and enforce the border. Again, we don't disagree that we need a border that is under control and where we follow our laws. What we disagree on is exploiting human beings for political gain.
So what's going on at the border in your assessment then, Congressman? With 2 million arrests at the border, what's happening down there?
Well, what's clearly going on is that we've got a broken immigration system, and Democrats have had a plan to fix that for years. But the Republicans have opposed this every step of the way and have sought to exploit the issue for political power. What is going on in recent times is that we had to close the border for the pandemic. That has created a backlog of asylum cases and others seeking legal entry or at least legal process. We have a surge in drug trafficking that we have to combat, and that's creating violence, particularly around the fentanyl trade. But none of these are new problems. These are issues we have seen for years. And we have to enforce our laws, including our asylum laws. We have to get control of the border, but we can respect human beings. My goodness, and we can avoid the kind of political stunts that we saw the Republicans engage in. But can I tell you something? Right now, when the Republicans have litigated this issue in places like the Hudson Valley, where today with the president we're announcing thousands and thousands of good manufacturing jobs and more than $100 billion invested through the CHIPS and Science Act in American jobs. When they try to litigate this issue against, say, reproductive freedom, political freedom, Pat Ryan won and their candidate lost.
Congressman, good morning. We are now just 5 weeks or so from Election Day, and the DCCC, the organization you chair, received a lot of attention this primary season, including some criticism from Democrats for funding some Republican candidates, extreme Republican candidates, under the theory that they might be easier to beat in November. Some in your own party criticized that, saying that's too risky, that we might give them a chance to win, and it looks like we're promoting candidates who are anti-democracy. As we stand now, the stretch run upon us. Do you defend that decision? Do you think it's a bet that's paying off?
Mr. Lemire, you just said, and I have enormous respect for you, but you just said that we funded Republican candidates. That is flat out wrong. We attacked a single Republican candidate with a general election ad that we ran 2 weeks earlier. And right now, Hillary Scholten is leading in the polls by double digits. She's going to beat John Gibbs. And that is a loss for Kevin McCarthy and the MAGA movement that wants to take away our reproductive freedom nationwide. So in a budget of over $300 million, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee invested $400,000 attacking a single Republican primary candidate with a general election ad a little bit early. So I don't know whatever the Senate's done or the governor's done. I understand people have concerns about this, and there are always difficult moral and philosophical questions in politics. That's fair. But let's put it in some context. My goodness.
Well, let's go a little further on that then. This is still something that you just explained what your organization did. There are some Democrats, though, who feel like the candidate who benefited from this, is someone who is a danger to democracy. And I understand, obviously, we were talking earlier in the show about parties that are making choices to back someone who is clearly unfit for office, and in their estimation. We talked about Herschel Walker earlier. Do the risks, just writ large, for our democracy right now, do the risks outweigh the rewards here?
Well, I'd say this is a great example of a false equivalence. I mean, if you're going to compare attacking a Republican candidate months ago in a single primary with $400,000 out of a $300 million budget, if you're going to compare that to what's going on right now with Herschel Walker in Georgia, I mean, my goodness, I tell you what, we're sitting here 30 days out from a midterm election where our basic reproductive freedoms and political freedoms are on the line, where families like mine that depend on marriage equality aren't going to fit in the MAGA view of America. We're going to go into campaign mode from coast to coast right now. I'm not looking in the rearview mirror at a decision that was made months ago. I'm looking forward through the windshield at holding this majority, and that is the larger moral imperative, so that the people who would have set aside the election, 139 of them were already in Congress on January 6th, and they voted to set aside the election. 75% of the Republican caucus right now supports a nationwide ban on reproductive freedom, abortion. That's the moral imperative to keep those people out of power.
Great ideas can come from anywhere.
I am really trying to go out of my comfort zone.
But with Michaels, you're always ready to go from spark to spectacular. Made with Michaels. Made by you. Halloween deal days are here. Save on decor, floral, and more.
Welcome back. It is time for a big announcement here on Morning Joe for Know Your Value and Forbes, the reveal of our second annual 50 over 50 list. It is out this morning, celebrating amazing women over the age of 50 who have achieved significant success later in life, often overcoming major obstacles. Our honorees have rejected the notion that the best, most dynamic parts of their lives are behind them as they age. They are thriving. The women on this list are extraordinary and include Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson at 52, actress Cheryl Lee Ralph at 65, author and psychologist Marsha Linehan at 79, civil rights activist Dolores Huerta at 92, and many, many more. Over the next few days, we're going to highlight several phenomenal women who made the list, and we start with a member of our NBC family, Hoda Kotb.
Hoda Kotb has been an icon on Today for more than a decade, coming into our homes before the sun is up with curiosity, compassion, and that beaming smile. Hoda's journey was not fast or easy. Rejected by 27 different companies before she landed her very first job in local news, spending a decade in the Midwest and the South, until she got the call from NBC News back in 1998 to be a correspondent on Dateline, to then spend years on the road. In 2007, she joined the Today family. Shortly after, Hoda revealed she'd been diagnosed with breast cancer.
Today was not a good day.
Openly sharing her pain and eventual triumph over the disease. In 2018, she was named co-anchor of Today with Savannah Guthrie, becoming the first female anchor duo to lead the show. Together, they cover the most crucial stories of our time. She had already been co-hosting Today's Fourth Hour for a decade. With her professional career thriving in her 50s, Hoda decided to openly dream and make motherhood a reality, adopting her two beautiful daughters, Haley and Hope. It was Savannah who nominated Hoda to be on the Forbes Know Your Value 50 over 50 list.
Hoda is a living, breathing demonstration that you can have it all and you can have it on your own terms. She is authentic. She is devoted to her family, and she's an incredible professional and a wonderful journalist.
I recently sat down with Hoda, and she told me that at 58, she's never been happier, and that everything has come right on time.
Congratulations.
I cannot believe it. By the way, I have the old Forbes 50 over 50. I have the magazine.
Very first.
I have the first one. I was like, St. Marshall, I was learning about all these women, and I thought, how do I not know them? I was just fascinated by it and honored.
It's an amazing list, and I think it has an amazing message, and that is long runway. Longer than we thought.
I remember when we were both at NBC, and I just remember where we were in our careers and how we were kind of hobbling on and wondering, like, was the end 15 years ago, 20 years ago, could that have been the end of our careers? And look at us sitting here. I mean,
My career actually ended. I got fired.
Yeah. And you emerged. I heard the saying, it gets greater later. It gets greater later, and it does. It gets greater in every single aspect of life.
Did you ever imagine your career after 50?
No.
Oh, no way, I didn't either.
Well, I think it was because we kind of watched people's careers come and go, didn't we? It was like, you knew that there was always the old guy anchor and a young girl anchor, and you never kind of
It was never us.
It was never, ever us. I think it was kind of funny, like you watched this and you thought that was the norm. And then one day, you turned 45 and you were here, and you turned 50 here. Then you looked across the street and you saw Katie Couric, you saw Meredith Vieira, you see Oprah, you see Gayle King, you see Robin Roberts.
You see Savannah and Hoda.
You see Savannah.
Co-hosting. Two women.
Yes. You can't be it unless you see it. You're like, oh, we can do that. Like, that's a possibility.
And yet for you, it's multifaceted. Like, what would you consider your greatest accomplishment over the age of 50?
My greatest accomplishment over the age of 50 is having Haley and Hope, without question. Who would have imagined
I didn't see it coming. I literally watched it live when you broke the news, and I thought, are you kidding me?
A friend of mine and I were walking down the street, and I remember, and she said, well, we never wanted kids. In mid-sentence, I said, well, actually, I did. And she said, well, you never said that. And I said, well, because I'm 50, so I don't want to say it. But I've always wanted them. I've always kind of dreamt about it. And lo and behold, the minute I said it kind of out into the universe, I started thinking, like, why not me?
I think it really actually makes the message of 50 over 50 so much more robust. You can achieve massive success over 50. We have women over 60, over 70, over 80, over 90.
Wow.
Reaching their highest impact, really killing it. And what you're telling us is that you can find happiness too.
I know I have never, ever in my life been this happy. Never. This decade of my life is by far the best decade I have ever had. And I would never have imagined that to have been a possibility.
Did you ever have a moment in your life before the age of 50 where you almost gave up?
The one thing I think I do really well is I get up. I used to play basketball in high school, and I believed with 15 seconds on the clock, down 5 points, we could do it. I calculate. I was like, you know what's going to happen? I'm getting the ball. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to get fouled. I'm going to hit the 2. I'm going to go for that foul shot. I'm going to miss it, but get the rebound. That's 4. Like, I believed to the end it was possible.
I can't wait to ask you this next question. What do you say to younger women in their 20s and 30s who are, like I was, rushing, trying so hard to like check up all the boxes, like constantly in a rush because you think you've got this clock ticking?
Don't rush it. Don't rush it. All the best things in life happened in my 50s, and we took all the lessons we learned and kind of applied them. I think just slow it down. I remember I actually called Robin Roberts and I said, oh my God, can you believe I'm 50, whatever I was, 52, and I have a baby. And she said, you know what that baby is, Hoda? And I said, what? She said, that baby's right on time. And I thought, everything's right on time. Your job for you is right on time. My job for me right now is right on time. We're right on time.
2 beautiful girls. I have 2 girls. I love it. I loved it when they were little. Hope and Haley. So for women thinking of a similar path, what's it like?
I love having children in my 50s. I love having a 3 and a 5-year-old. I love it. When I go to the gym to work out, I make sure I lift 40 pounds or more because I want to hoist it. My trainer's like, what do you want to lift? I said, I want to lift 40 pounds.
Haley.
And when she weighs 50 pounds, I want to lift 50. And I feel like having kids in your 50s, I mean, I'm so much calmer than I was. I'm so much smarter. I'm living in the moment.
My girls would say I'm 28 and 30. And I was on overnights, mornings, whatever I was doing at MSNBC, that stuff.
Yeah.
Everything was so rush.
Yeah.
And if I could do it again, I would do it in my 50s because I feel like I have so much more to offer and I can be still.
Yeah.
And love it.
Yes. So I think it's like savor and linger. That's what I'm trying to do. Savor and linger.
I love it. And Savannah, who just turned 50, nominated Hoda, which is so amazing. We have an interview with Savannah, and you can watch my entire interview with Hoda at knowyourvalue.com, Forbes.com.
Under them, New York was rated the most corrupt. Under Hochul, it's worse. Hochul got caught in pay-to-play scandals. Now, new allegations.
Allegations of corruption. She got a major campaign donation from a company the state did big business with.
Hochul rigged a lucrative COVID testing contract for a large donor at twice the price. Even Hochul's own family is poised to make a fortune off her corruption. Kathy Hochul, even more corrupt than Cuomo.
Not overcome the ongoing threat to our democracy. There must be stiff consequences for those responsible. Now I'll turn things over to our vice chair to start telling this story.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without objection, the presiding officer is authorized to declare the committee in recess at any point. Pursuant to House Deposition Authority Regulation 10, I announce that the committee has approved the release of the deposition material presented during today's hearing. And let me begin tonight by wishing Chairman Thompson a rapid recovery from COVID. He has expertly led us through 8 hearings so far, and he has brought us to the point we are today. In our initial hearing, the chairman and I described what ultimately became Donald Trump's 7-part plan to overturn the 2020 presidential election. A plan stretching from before Election Day through January 6th. At the close of today's hearing, our ninth, we will have addressed each element of that plan. But in the course of these hearings, we have received new evidence, and new witnesses have bravely stepped forward. Efforts to litigate and overcome immunity and executive privilege claims have been successful, and those continue. Doors have opened, new subpoenas have been issued, and the dam has begun to break. And now, even as we conduct our 9th hearing, we have considerably more to do. We have far more evidence to share with the American people and more to gather. So our committee will spend August pursuing emerging information on multiple fronts before convening further hearings this September. Today, we know far more about
checking.
Perhaps a barter is warranted.
Hi there. Acknowledged. Done, done, done. Received. Check. Good luck. Ready and waiting.
Just a second.
Perhaps a barter is warranted.
They won't like this.
Checking right now. Received. Check, check, check. Acknowledged. Whenever you need me again, Guardian.
Has something been chewing on these?
Ah, shall we begin then?
Hi there. Done. Message for Zur. What's Zur? Biological materials.
Eververse isn't just a title, it's a promise.
New monarchy. Very important. Says so on the package.
I don't think do something. We have to fight for ourselves.
Eververse trades in goods we feel enhance a Guardian's journey.
I'm done.
Back's killing me. How do you not watch like this?
Xenobiological materials.
Calculations don't make any sense.
Don't repeat this.
She said she wanted to express herself, so I gave her a thumbs up.
Package for Commander Zavala. Kind man.
Not having time for this.
Sure, rhythmic physical expressions won't win a fight, but they feel good. And feeling good is better than not.
Has something been chewing on these?
Dead orbit package. Spare parts. Leaking. Oh dear.
Fenchurch does the exploring. I make the deals.
Not gonna be a problem.
Yes.
bad rattle. Very bad.
Hey, I'm really sorry for the loss of your...
There we go. Yes. I can definitely fix this.
Steady decaying orbit. Maybe another 20 years.
I can definitely fix this.
Missed that run in the Crucible?
Fenchurch does the exploring. I make the deals.
Good for him.
Why'd you two break up? I can definitely fix this.
Eververse trades in goods we feel enhance a Guardian's journey.
Until it's done.
Fallen to the whole crew.
I don't have training.
Ah.
Fenchurch does the exploring. I make the deals.
Nothing but white light. When I woke up.
Okay.
Oh, come on!
Eververse trades in goods we feel enhance a Guardian's journey.
No time for politics.
Everything depends on the Vanguard.
I told him to do this yesterday. This doesn't make any sense.
Fenchurch does the exploring. I make the deals.
The rain tastes funny these days.
What an interesting little old file. Hardly any encryption at all. I'll have to investigate later.
You missed that run in the Crucible? Shame.
HP 30 to gasoid. Double time, double time.
Eververse isn't just a title, it's a promise.
Books for the Titans. Too heavy.
She said she wanted to express herself, so I gave her a thumbs up.
I need a break.
C-30G is lost in the city. We're understaffed already.
Eververse trades in goods we feel enhance a Guardian's journey.